stroke. Sever the head of a wannabe clever sucker. Rated X for extra local crazy motherfucker.
Bro,
All right.
What is that martial art? I don't know if that's a martial art, man.
It's that Vietnamese action. All right. We are live on YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. I'm actually going to start linking the Twitch and YouTube more when I promote this to get more people in there. So we're not only on X. But
someone was mocking our Twitch action the other day.
Yeah, someone was like, "Oh, your Twitch chat is dead." It's like, yeah, well,
we're trying. We're trying,
guys. We're trying to keep it real. So yeah, today our show is mostly going to be a news roundup on what's been going on since the last week. We've had quite a bit happens every week, so there's no shortage of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, Jesus. On fucking speed, some fast forward mode.
Well, there's decades happening.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Well, the 12-day war is over. So far, as far as we know, war might break out again. But as far as we know, oh yeah, Tucker Carlson is going to interview the president of Iran, though. So
wow,
really? That's
he already did it. It just needs to be edited and released.
Oh my god!
How did he even get that? That's crazy.
Yeah. So I don't know. It might be out now actually. So maybe we could watch some of it and
maybe he like added him like on Twitter and it's like
he added it on LinkedIn.
Let's link up, bro. That's kind of wild. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna watch that. I mean,
oh yeah, no, you gotta watch.
It's gonna be crazy.
Interviews. Like I hate the guy. He's an idiot and he's got an agenda. But
fucking Swanson selling crypto cash.
Yeah, I mean, I think his agenda is that he thinks war with Iran and war with Russia and war with China, or a war with Iran is a distraction from China. I think that's what his real angle is, but
probably, yeah.
But I think
I'd have to know more. Like, I don't fully. What is his ideology? I don't know. I mean,
like,
I know it's noxious American nationalism, but it's kind of like almost 1950s style, like conservatism, I guess, at least economically speaking.
Yeah, I think he reminds me of the later day Christopher Lash a little bit, actually. Kind of this populist, socially conservative populism, like you need to go after the white collar elites or whatever.
Yeah.
But not as sophisticated as Lash, but with also kind of like the paleocon isolationism stuff. But
yeah, I mean, but from what I understand economically, I mean, he does, to call him anti-capitalist would be insane, but I think he's not a free market fundamentalist.
Yeah. I think he fetishizes like small businesses, but he's not like.
But like, I also mean like he's not totally adverse to intervention of the state.
Right.
Yeah.
But so yeah, there's that. But the first thing I kind of wanted to talk about was, last week we went over the Zoron campaign, and we were talking about this a little bit before we went live. But there's this controversy with Zoron's college admissions, which is, in my opinion, a non-controversy, but the actual controversy that the New York Times is trying to create is like a non-controversy. But what I do think is interesting is where the story comes from, because it's literally from this like Jewish race scientist guy, which is
pretty sus.
That sounds like a field that's alive and well in Israel.
Yeah, well,
for real.
Right. So, for those who haven't heard, I'm sure a lot of people have heard about this idiocy, but basically, the New York Times came out with a story like 2 or 3 days ago about how when Zoron applied for Columbia University, at which his father is a professor, he checked the boxes African American and Asian, and this information was dug up by a Twitter account by the name of Kremu, who is a prominent race, quote unquote, scientist account promoted by Elon Musk. He's a hardcore Zionist, Jewish supremacist, very interested in race science data that proves that white people and Jews are superior to everyone else.
What a lovely guy.
Yeah, he comes out on June 30th saying, I have private information on a public official who is currently running for an important office. This information shows they engaged in professional misconduct. And so a few days later, they say, or the same day, they say the story's been picked up by a national news outlet. If I don't publish it, they don't publish it, I will. But
this is just like, okay, the first reaction I have is, this is like some hall monitor shit. Like,
yeah,
you cheated on your homework. Like, as if like that fundamentally affected his moral character. You know what I'm saying?
right.
Let's be honest, this probably wasn't the best choice for him to mark that down.
Yeah, but he's like 18 years old.
Yeah, I mean, but like
he's Ugandan and Indian, so as far as he knew, he was making like the correct choice according to like American racial categories, which are fake.
This is honestly the type of controversy that it's very desperate to me, but
Yeah.
it works precisely in the American political context.
Right. Right.
Well, as I said, it's just like this petty moralism, which in no way, shape, or form fundamentally allows us to make an evaluation about his moral character and standing.
Yeah.
But which is just kind of used in this weird legalistic hall monitor way to just like, I don't even know, to like somehow try to discredit him. It's like some real lawyer shit. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
Oh, like he lied on his, he didn't pay his speeding ticket. Like, therefore he's not fit to like do what? What is that supposed to allow us to say?
I honestly do think the purpose of it is to drive a racial wedge.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so another thing about this guy, and you're gonna love this, Jamil, is this guy's name, Cremu, is named after Adolphe Cremu, was a French lawyer and politician who served as Minister of Justice under the Second Republic and Government of National Defense. Raised Jewish, he served as president of the Alliance Israelite Universelle, secured French citizenship for Algerian Jews under French rule through the Cremu decree.
Oh, wait.
Yes,
Wait,
this guy.
Wait. This is the Cremu Accords.
Yes.
Oh my God. That's
yes.
So people probably don't know this, but in Algeria, like in all North Africa, there were many, many Jews, and they had been there for centuries, and they had been part of the community. They had neighborhoods in Algiers and the major cities. There was nothing like a pogrom, from what I know, ever. And then the French came, and they did a very, very good job of divide and conquer. And they managed to, something through something called the Cremu Accords. They accorded citizenship, or they gave citizenship to the Jewish population and not to the Muslim population. Now, so they were French citizens, whereas the Muslims were colonial subjects. I think that was like their literal legal category or like standing. So wow, that's really weird. It's almost like, I don't even know. It's almost like having a fucking handle like Jim Crow, like, you know what I'm saying? Or something.
Yeah.
It's weird.
This guy just like a few days ago was like posting at Elon Musk about how like IQ differences haven't like changed in the United States since like the 19th century. Like this is just a straight up like race realist guy, and the New York Times got this story from him, which is the real, like, that is the real story here. It's just that the New York Times is basically like taking non-stories from like these creepy like race fucking eugenics people and making them into something that isn't relevant or important at all, really, and making it into something relevant. But also like it's funny because he thought this was going to affect like the betting markets for the election, but he posts like the day the story comes out, like hoping that the betting markets haven't reacted to the information at all. So
yeah, I also love how these people are always complaining about cancel culture, and then they try to like dig up like petty mistakes,
Right.
to precisely cancel someone.
Well, you know, cancel culture was kind of pioneered by Zionists in the first.
Yeah, let's be honest. I mean, it's only really, as a regime, it's only been effectively wielded by the right wing in this country.
And he's like, Adams has the opportunity to give Zoron the funniest 2-word greeting. No one cares. No one fucking cares. Eric Adams posted this stupid AI meme. No one cares.
Yeah, well, okay. So I love how like he's fucked up for like marking a box incorrectly, but like Eric Adams is like taking money from like Turkish like dignitaries, and like he's like actually corrupt as fuck, and he has the gall to like put someone's character in question. Like you could literally buy Eric Adams for like
he's the poster child of corruption, bro.
yeah, he's like Tammany Hall in the 21st century. Like
Got all that Turkish money and not even a full head of hair
yeah.
out of it. Like
Bro, for real. I can't. He has the gall to criticize someone. Like, God, that guy needs to shut up and just go hide.
Yeah, well, you know, as you were saying earlier, Joseph, like, this is kind of like an attempt to draw a wedge between black voters and Zoron, and
yeah.
I don't really think it's gonna work.
Well,
yeah.
I guess he's too like likable for that, but I'm sure it'll work with like older people, I suppose.
people who are probably already voting Cuomo anyway.
Yeah, let's be
Right.
honest. You know, I mean, like they're trying to distract from the major issue, which is like his campaign is about affordability, right? And like I think a lot of people are going to make the calculus of like, okay, well, I would rather fight for affordability than like morally like shun this person because of some petty mistake, you know?
Yeah. But yeah, it's clearly like they're trying to alienate him from black voters, and you know, they're trying to be, oh, this guy like is you know, trying to steal your valor as an African American. Oh, I've received more death threats in the last 4 hours than I know what to do with. Oh, poor you.
Okay, good, bro.
But when the stories and lawsuits regarding this little country's involvement at Colombia come out, I'm certain that he's going with the whole Qatar thing.
Okay, great. Yeah.
So pathetic. So yeah, but yeah, that is
This guy's a freak. Let's
guy's a freak. That's the actual story of relevance. The New York Times is essentially becoming completely and it's becoming like Tablet Mag, basically. It's becoming just a racist, race scientist, Zionist rag.
Yes, that's pretty desperate.
Yeah,
Listening stories from weirdo right-wing people on Twitter.
yeah, bro. It's only a matter of time, Kilgore, before Eric Adams is singing the praises of Ataturk and denying the Armenian genocide. So, you know, like, what a fucking bunch of lunatics. Oh,
yeah.
God. So
I do want to say though, what were you gonna say?
oh, nothing.
Okay. But yeah, Zoron, you know, this is the 4th of July weekend. And, you know, we're going to talk more about the big, beautiful bill. And, you know, it's essentially just another symptom of American decline, I feel. But, you know, I don't think this is a very strange 4th of July. I think, I feel like a lot of people a lot of liberals who might normally celebrate probably didn't celebrate this year. But, I don't know. It was a weird 4th of July, but Zoron, you know, he had his 4th of July message, and I don't know. I kind of generated some controversy on Twitter by asking people what they thought of Zoron's 4th of July message, and it generated some discussion. So I'll put it up on the Jumbotron, and we can see what we think about how Zoron is framing the issue of America here. He says, America is beautiful, contradictory, unfinished. I am proud of our country, even as we constantly strive to make it better, protect and deepen our democracy, fulfill its promise for each and every person who calls it home. Happy Independence Day. No kings in America. I don't know. What do we think of this kind of messaging?
Was that it?
Yeah, that was it.
It's just kind of empty. I mean,
yeah.
like, personally, does he need to make a statement? I don't know. Like, we also can't. We're internationalists and anti-imperialists. We don't have a party or a movement for to which he's accountable.
Well, we kind of do. We have the DSA.
Yeah, but
He's
come
supposed to be
on.
accountable
I mean,
to.
he's not. Like, in what sense is he accountable to DSA? In what sense is what's his like ideological position within DSA? It's the right. So to kind of expect him to fulfill our internationalist and anti-imperialist credentials is kind of just unrealistic. That doesn't mean that we can't be critical. I mean, we also can't expect him to say, death to America, KKK,
Right. I mean, I think that would have been
like,
stupid anyway. Like,
yeah. That being said, it could certainly have been more. I think the overall strategy really should be whip people up against the ruling class.
Right. I
Against
think, I didn't find it like offensive. I think some people were like saying that this is like betrayal of like socialism or whatever. Like, I think some people were like overreacting to it, which, there's going to be a crowd in the left where like anything other than like total, like if he says anything other than like death to America or whatever, like you're gonna complain. But like,
yeah, he's not going to make like a settler statement,
Right. But I think my main critique of it was that he kind of like talks about like America already being a democracy, and that we just need to like deepen the existing democracy that's in America. Like, it kind of just sounded a bit too much like an Obama statement.
I mean, that honestly does reflect the rights politics in DSA.
Yeah, and it does reflect the DSA rights politics. It's kind of like, it's an inoffensive left patriotism, but it doesn't have the kind of revolutionary bite that.
I mean, I also understand that he has a contradictory role, right? Like, he's running to be mayor of New York, so he's not gonna. If he says some crazy thing out of settlers, it would be a huge problem. If he says something that's state loyalist, it's gonna be a huge problem.
Yeah, he's very much, as you said, like in this kind of gray zone. So, but it is worth stating. I mean, and repeating. What is the problem with nationalism or patriotism in the first world or in an imperialist power? And there are many things to say, but I'll boil it down to two things. One, internally, it is a means of deflecting the genuine class struggle between proletariat and bourgeoisie. It is a means of generating a false unity which hides or covers over the fact that the bourgeoisie is daily pilfering, exploiting, and oppressing the working class.
Right.
And secondly, externally, it becomes a means of generating a false internal unity to legitimate the aggression and brutalization of quote unquote lesser or weaker nations. And so for those reasons, it's very important that we start developing a counter narrative against whatever form of patriotism. Because the truth is that American patriotism is not, it's not a neutral thing. It has very real material consequences for the rest of the world. But as a strategy of generating a false unity within the US, which permits the bourgeoisie to exploit, oppress the proletariat in the name of some nation, as if like everyone were sharing in some common good. It's a very effective strategy of promoting of developing a false consciousness. So yeah, we have to develop that counter narrative. That being said, like Mamdani wasn't about to say all that. You go on
right.
I
think you can strike a balance between like, you can make reference to your country's history and kind of be patriotic, quote unquote, in a way that doesn't create that false unity. I think you can talk about the history of abolitionism and talk about the history of class struggle in your country and talk about, the kind of if there are positive parts of American history that we can kind of draw on to create a narrative, that doesn't serve those ends. It's just that we actually have to do the work of constructing that and creating some actual content around it and not just doing this kind of like kitschy, patriotic, like, pandering, basically.
It kind of makes me think of like, what I like about the show Veep a lot? Like whenever like she has to like give a speech, it's just like empty formalisms.
Right.
Like American political discourse is so empty. It's so formulaic.
It just trades on the same sort of like pastiche, like
Yeah.
nation of immigrants, rights and freedoms, constitution,
Yeah.
like these elements that always have to be addressed or whatever.
Americans love freedom and will always fight for freedom. Freedom is in our blood, and blah blah blah, and Eagle Rock, whatever. It's like
Flag Eagle Rock.
Yeah, Flag Eagle Rock, dude. It's just so incredibly formulaic. It's really brain rot. It's thought stopping, just fucking rote bullshit. You know what I'm saying? And wouldn't it be nice if we had leaders that could actually get people thinking, you know what I'm saying, and not trying to just speak in the same rote formulas, but like also being very clear about like how all these rote formulas just like hide the duplicity and hypocrisy of this system. I mean, that's one thing. Whenever I hear people talk about like, oh, freedom this, freedom that, it's like, just motherfucker, like if you're from some rural area, there's like the nearest hospital is like 200 miles away. And like like how are you supposed to be free if like when you like get a bad cut, you're gonna die of a staph infection like in like a week? You know what I'm saying? Like freedom to do what? Freedom to just like fucking work a shitty job and get exploited and not have.
I mean, something has to be said for how enduring that the American mode of ideology is, because people actually believe these things. Like they strongly believe that, and I think the big reason why is because no one in the U.S. has ever really had to suffer. Like, imagine crowing about freedom and whatnot if you have bombs, like raining down on you. So, because there's no actual, obviously people suffer here, but what I mean, like, the standard of living is high compared to virtually any other country on earth. So,
we live at the expense of other nations. That's just the truth. That is the truth of third worldism.
But the thing is like, I feel like there's something almost more like irrational about it, because let's also be honest, the standard of living in the US compared to other Western nations, European nations, is worse. And like the US is so incredibly unequal. I mean, you have like third world fucking like living standards coupled with just the most incredible wealth. And so I feel like there's something almost like, it's almost like a fucking like brain worm that's gotten into people's heads, and this like lie is repeated everywhere since you're young, and people just like get hooked on it, and that's the way they think about the world, so it's just like there's something like pathological about it, honestly, because like ask anyone ask anyone what freedom means.
Well, I think I heard
the overcoming of necessity. Sorry, Jake.
No, you're good. But I think I heard recently that Trump's approval rating has not gone below 40%.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that's the black pilling statistic right there.
But I really do think it's because they haven't suffered. Like even the tariff thing that didn't happen for a sustained period of time. So no one actually had to deal with 33 or whatever percent higher prices on like food or whatever. So even then, people didn't suffer under the so-called tariff regime. So I as long as Americans are insulated from the consequences of their own policies, they're not. Nothing's going to happen to them.
What? An interesting statistic would be to look at how Hispanics or Latinos who voted for Trump have changed since he's gotten to office. Yeah. I think that would be, I don't know if there's any statistics on that, but if that didn't change, well, I mean, here's the thing. Also, it's kind of like, it's not as if like all Latinos are suffering equally either, under the ICE regime. It affects undocumented. It affects like very much a special part of the working class, right? So So it's not as if you ask some like third generation like Texan Mexican who owns like a fucking plumbing company, like whether or not they still approve of Trump. Like that's evidently not reflective of of the experience of the Latino working class that is very much under attack. But I don't know, it'd still be interesting to see that, see if there's any solidarity.
Well, the leader of Latinos for Trump turned on Trump.
So there you go. I mean, that is pretty indicative of something, right? I mean, those are something. That's people who should have some kind of solidarity with their community, seeing that their community is under attack and is suffering in an extraordinary way because of the Trump regime.
I mean, depending on maybe when some time has passed from the effects of this budget and that begins to percolate out into the wider society and economy, maybe you'll start to see some cracks form in like the popular MAGA ideology.
Yeah, it's worth turning to that now, kind of explicitly.
Yeah, we got a comment in the YouTube. Treasury bonds keep going the way they are. Chickens are going to go home to roost. Won't be instantaneous, but that's the golden goose they're strangling. Yeah. No, I think there's going to be a panic. There's going to be a financial crash soon. We don't know when, but it's going to be ugly. But it's big, beautiful bill. I hate saying it because it's just such a stupid name. Like, I guess they're trying to like parody like the Build Back Better thing, which was also a stupid name from Biden. But I guess we could just call it the big bunch of bullshit. But yeah, it passed on the 3rd. And I guess the plan was to sign it on the good old 4th of July for a epic patriotic celebration, Independence Day. It's a great transformation of our nation. So my understanding of the bill is that there's kind of there's 3 big parts of it. There's the tax cuts, there's the changes to the tax code, then there's these cuts, and then there's the immigration stuff. And the changes to the tax code, the biggest parts of that, from my understanding, are that the Trump tax cuts from 2017, which, like, we all know that they were just like a big tax cuts for the wealthy, and it was upward redistribution of wealth, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's going to be like cemented into law, I guess. So they're going to be made permanent. And hold on, let me respond to this comment over here. It says, I am a white dude in the Midwest with 20 years of tech and engineering experience, and I'm watching a socialist live YouTube channel. What does that tell you? Well, I think it tells us that we have a message that people are turning towards, and that it makes sense. And that
I also think it means that, you as an individual probably have a good moral sense, but I think that a humanist kind of discourse, which tries to bring about socialism by moral suasion, is kind of naive, because especially the bourgeoisie and the upper elements of the petty bourgeoisie are not going to give up their material standing because all of a sudden they have a moral epiphany. The truth is that you have to take power from them, and that's not necessarily always going to be pretty.
Right.
So I think that's the thing. I think that doesn't mean that we should be like immoral or whatever. Or like that we shouldn't have a moral message. It's just, I think that a strategy that primarily relies on homiletics or on preaching is kind of naive, unfortunately. But yeah, anyways. So, Donald, you were saying about the tax. You were saying about the BBB or whatever.
Yeah, so the tax cuts, they're completely regressive. There's like one populist part of it where they're going to do like the no taxes on tips for service workers. So there's like one little part of it that like will benefit like a section of the working class. And that was like something that Trump ran on. And I think, I mean, it's hard to kind of like argue against that. Like if you're a service worker, like who is gonna like argue against that? But like the rest of the tax stuff is absolutely like ridiculous. And I found a list of all the tax provisions. I can bring it up on the Jumbotron.
Well, the first thing is like, I'm sorry, the wage structure in America is fucked. Like,
yeah,
just pay people a fucking decent salary. Stop pushing off whether or not the working class is going to have like a livable like wage on the like goodwill of people, like
right.
the goodwill of consumers. It's just fundamentally like just fucked up system.
Right. So, this is all the different like tax stuff. Bill makes the tax rates enacted in 2017 and the TJCA agreement. Bill adds an additional year of inflation adjustments. We're doing this child tax credit thing, but the biggest point of the tax code, from what I can see, is that it's just more of the typical kind of Trump promise of we're gonna basically reduce taxes on the wealthy, and I guess there's this no tax on overtime thing is like kind of like another like populist part of it, but in the end, it's just
I mean that it's like giving small tax breaks to small parts of the working class while ramming through like or an overall agenda of giving a tax break to the rich. Basically.
Right. So that's what you expect from Trump, obviously. The cuts to Medicaid spending are really fucking bad.
Yeah,
they're up to 18% cuts to Medicaid, and Trump like made a promise not to cut Medicaid.
I think it's something like it'll amount to over $1 trillion in cuts to Medicaid. That's unbelievable. I read somewhere that 17 million people will eventually no longer have any form of health care because of it.
Yeah.
And the University of Pennsylvania study showed that something like 55,000 people will die, will die because of this. So this is an instance of social murder.
Yeah, it's up to 12 million people losing health insurance is what I had read, but I mean that's just it's in the millions.
That's the point. It's in the millions.
It's an estimate. It could be 17 million, it could be 12 million, it could be 10, it could be 20. Either way, it's millions of people are going to lose health insurance. Many of them are going to be Trump voters.
Yeah.
So
and I've seen instances or reports of like Carlos, were you the one who sent me that where like this one rural hospital, well, I think many rural hospitals will be closed because I'm guessing they receive subsidies or financing largely through Medicaid or something like it. And so many rural areas will be affected and people will no longer be able to get any kind of, they won't be able to go to a hospital.
A lot of disabled people rely on Medicaid, and they're trying to, part of the bill, they're not trying to, it's passed, so they're going to add these work requirements for receiving Medicaid.
It's just,
which is just absolutely ridiculous because I mean, if a lot of these disabled people who survive on Medicaid, they're not able to just go out and get a job.
No, it's just the cruelty of it is infuriating. It's social murder.
Yeah.
It's one of those instances where the Americans love to talk about the KGB or the Stasi and make movies about it. But this is, you might as well take a bunch of people, 55,000 people outside and just shoot them in the head. Because what you're doing is in a kind of anonymous way.
Right. Yeah. Might as well get the misery over with and just shoot the people because you're just killing them slowly and painfully.
Yeah. So it's like, of course, no one fucking Stasi agent goes out there and shoots someone in the head, but you're effectively condemning tens of thousands of people to death. You're killing them.
Well, actually, to be fair to the Stasi, they got rid of the death penalty after 1970, so they weren't even doing that.
Well, it's just like implementing like policy that kills people. It's social murder. It's really
Well,
just,
if you use the market and you use the budget instead of a gun, it's somehow more humanitarian, or at the very least, it's more impersonal. So you can't attach it to any singular figure or even the image of a figure like you can the Stasi, right?
yeah. That's why it's also more. That's also like one of the things that makes capitalism so quote unquote pernicious is the anonymous mechanisms through which it coerces, exploits, and oppresses people and kills them in this instance. Yeah, Brett. I mean, my fiance is on Medicaid, so we'll see what happens.
A whole lot of people, man.
You know.
Yeah. And if you probably couldn't get worse with the Medicaid, food stamps, the SNAP program, which many of us, I'm sure, have had experience with, is going to get cut by as much as 20%.
Yeah.
So less food is going to be in people's pantry.
Yeah. And of course, what does that mean? You know, I mean, there's another thing of like bodily harm. That
food prices are not very good these days. If you've been grocery shopping, you've noticed.
Yeah. So it's just a disease. So that's the like the first part of this just like big genocide bill, like kill the working
it's
class
just
bill.
ridiculous. Like, and what is the purpose of this? So I understand, like, the capitalists, you know, they want lower taxes. That's more money. But who actually benefits from screwing this many people, working people over? You know, like, it just seems like sadism.
Well, I mean, also, like, you know, we have Marxists often have a certain theory of the state where the state is supposed to act as the quote unquote executive committee of the bourgeoisie. That is, it's supposed to stand above the individual interests of any capitalist and set up the conditions for the general conditions for accumulation.
Right.
But it's not as if this relation is necessary. There's a certain contingency where the state is also just a body of powerful people,
right?
Who one time can implement completely irrational strategies,
right,
in a way that is more or less like it becomes the executive committee of a section of the bourgeoisie, where they can then use that power to just fucking pick at the carcass, and in so doing threaten the general conditions for accumulation or stability, capitalist stability.
Right.
This is a very good this is just what it is, right? I mean, this is literally just like a cash grab, like
smash and grab whatever they can. Because even from the standpoint of so-called like, oh, we want to balance the budget, this budget doesn't do that. It adds $3 trillion actually. It puts more pressure actually on their deficit, which is already becoming a problem for them. So
yeah, this is just, oh yeah, I mean, Carlos, you should take us through a bit like what the consequences could be for, you know, economic speaking.
It's going to be like the immediate consequence is going to be like borrowing costs are going to increase, because if you just added $3 trillion to the budget, the people that you're lending the money to, the same capitalist class that you sell the bonds to, are going to look at you and say, well, I don't think you can pay this. We got to charge you more interest. It just makes the problem worse and worse.
Yeah.
But so, like, just to say, like, there might be, because, you know, like the U.S. government does issue the dollars. So like, at least on paper, they don't have to worry about a default because they could print the money, as it were. But printing the money is not free. Like it doesn't, it constitutes a devaluation of your money. So, you know, there's inflation, there's low growth, there's et cetera, right? Like, so I think they're, you know, like they're putting themselves in a bad position, essentially.
Like, of course, like the U.S. state will not default on loans, but people might be a bit more cautious, right? That bonds will yield the returns they want in the time they want, right? Is that
like it because it basically means that everybody's borrowing costs go up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then that's fucked. And Americans live on credit, and as I've said before, the American economy is a rich portfolio of various kinds of debt. So that's obviously not good.
Yeah. And the whole credit economy it's a very, very stupid the way we've built up this economy on credit. So it will be interesting to see it all come crashing down.
Yeah, we'll have to have Michael Roberts on too, and Carlos can effectively interview him about all of these various things. 'Cause every time Carlos is explaining like finance shit to me, I'm like, this makes no sense. This shit makes no sense. It's stupid. This is not how things should run. But anyway, so yeah, the next part of the bill is the
immigration enforcement.
Yeah, Jesus.
Which as hold on, I think it was a different comment. Brett over here mentions that it's 170 billion for immigration enforcement, and the entire U.S. Army budget is 198 billion. So that right there is something that's
it makes it in one fell swoop just like the biggest federal law enforcement agency in the country. And I think there's something like they're trying to hire 10,000 more agents. I don't know how many it is, but
who's signing up to be ICE agents right now?
Thousands.
The same people who joined the Free Corps, I'm imagining.
Yeah, I think some of them are also really some of them are ideologically committed, but there's also just like callous people who think they're like giving them like a signing bonus for like thousands of dollars. So if you're like economically desperate and have like at least 3 functioning brain cells, you can like join up with ICE, and I think there are a lot of people who don't give a fuck, they have no fucking moral code, and if they get $10,000 in their pocket, they'll do whatever, right? So
same type of people who become bandits in Gaza.
Yeah, exactly. It's sometimes it's just crass material interest. So immediate material interest. So, but and they're also going to build more detention centers. They already built that.
Oh, the Alligator Alcatraz.
God, I don't want to. We have to stop using their. Like,
well, I just call it Alligator Auschwitz because.
Yeah, let's call it that. Yeah.
Because that's effectively what it is. I saw the video of them like putting alligators into the swamp near the facility.
Oh my god!
The fact that they're spending money to do this, it should. I want to say that they're deeply unserious, but it's obviously not the case. They're serious about what they're doing. They're
literally like feudal lords, like dumping fucking alligators in their boat. Like, it's what timeline are we in? The other thing is like I love how you can't build shit in this country, but in like what they want Alligator Alcatraz, and in 1 week they build this thing. Like, what did they like hire Chinese contractors to do it? Like, how did they do that?
They probably, I don't know. They probably got like the National Guard or some whack ass contractor.
When it comes to building concentration camps and police states, the United States finds that it has the most amazing and effective state capacity that can just overcome all regulations and all, all political,
Yeah, but meanwhile, like, the potholes in the road here are like Fallujah, and it's like you can't fucking like the trains like are worse than like Russia and World War.
Bro, some parts of DC are actually Fallujah.
Yeah, bro, for real. So it's like, can you like give us infrastructure, please? Like, just at least like at a middle income level, like middle income country level, at least. Like, unbelievable, man. Just and obviously the repercussions on that most vulnerable section of the working class is going to be terrible.
So what did they do with ICE? They give them more money in this bill or something?
Oh, huge! Yeah, I mean, the huge increase. It's the largest federal. Yeah, it's the largest federal law enforcement agency.
Yeah. I thought one thing I read that was interesting. There's
Are you serious?
What?
Oh no, sorry.
What?
I misread. So I thought well, they're giving it $170 billion.
Yeah, that's what Brett was saying. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's $170 billion for ICE. Like that's, and this is the thing.
That's up from like 4.
Yeah.
dude.
This is an unprecedented expansion of the U.S. police state.
Yeah.
And I read something from Theta Skocpol. She's a political scientist. She's not like a Marxist or anything.
Oh no, she's great. Are you kidding me?
She's great. Yeah, she's great. And she said something in the the website Talking Points memos.
No, I don't actually.
They publish some pretty good stuff, but she said something that was pretty interesting about this. That
Yeah, I mean, she's famous for her studies of the Russian and French Revolution.
right. And there was a piece on here about the expansion of ICE, and she says, last spring, when Dan Zieblatt and I taught a comparative course on democratic backsliding or studied the Hungarian and German cases, left me slightly reassured of the United States today. Hungary, highly centralized, and Germany, the most important state transformation, happened just before Hitler was employed as chancellor, when the previous government nationalized the Prussian police and bureaucracy, removing it from social democratic control and federated Germany's largest state. Not long after, unexpectedly, Hitler could easily turn the centralized agencies into his Gestapo corps. I thought last year that the USA was somewhat protected against any similar coercive authoritarian takeover by its political federal structure, given state and local government rights to control most U.S. police powers. But now I see that the Miller-Trump ethno-authoritarians have figured out a devastatingly clever workaround. I kind of like that term, ethno-authoritarians. Immigration is an area where a U.S. president can exercise virtually unchecked legal coercive power, especially if backed by a Supreme Court majority and corrupted Department of Justice. Now Congress has given ICE unprecedented resources, much of its windfall to be used for grafts with private contractors of Palantir. Yeah. Trump patronizes, but lots of it to hire street agents willing to mask themselves and do whatever they are told against residents and fellow American citizens. The Miller-Trumpites are not interested only in rounding up undocumented immigrants. They will step up using ICE and TOD enforcements to harass Democrats, citizen critics, and subvert future elections if they can. So that's what Theta Skocpol is saying. Here's
Wow, excellent.
Yeah. So they just voted to give the Gestapo $140 billion.
70 billion, dude.
$170 billion. Yeah. And this is a wing of the state that doesn't, is not, it's completely under federal control. The state and local authorities don't have the same.
Then there's that. And then like a week or so ago, the Supreme Court ruled that federal court, like district courts, can't issue injunctions in immigration cases anymore.
Yes.
So that removes another check.
It is absolutely terrifying because they can now denaturalize people, and
then you'd have to go all the way to the Supreme Court to even get a hearing.
And the Supreme Court is what the Supreme Court is today, and yeah, this is getting really bad.
This is very really bad. Yeah, this is very, very bad. Yeah. Yeah, I heard that like Palantir guys are being like instated as like higher officers. Just
are you serious?
Yeah. It's the denaturalization thing is wow. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, and so I'm just wondering, the Democrats are just pathetic. Like the only person who seemed to put up any fight to stop this bill was Thomas Massie, who, is
Thomas Massie,
Thomas Massie.
I heard Ro Khanna saying some shit on Democracy Now! That guy fucking sucks.
I mean, I just don't understand how you.
If you had an effective labor movement at all, shit should have been shut down. Honestly, they should have just caused chaos. But we don't have that. So
right. Kilgore Kraut points out that there's spontaneous neighborhood defense initiatives popping up and fighting back against ICE. And I think that is basically the only real resistance against this agenda that's kind of happening. I mean,
that's happening on the ground. Yeah. Of course, it's not being led by an effective leadership because the Democrats are just pathetic.
And Democrats, hold on. I was going to actually play Bernie Sanders' speech about this because I found it kind of frustrating.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, hold on.
Bernie's been frustrating as hell lately.
You know, it's hold on, it's yeah, it's up. Let me get it full screen.
Much for joining me. Let me be very clear. Trump's so-called big, beautiful bill, now on the floor of the Senate, is one of the most dangerous pieces of legislation ever brought forth in the modern history of our country. It is a gift to the billionaire class while causing massive pain for working families. Actually, I'm wrong. I shouldn't use the word gift because the billionaires paid for it. This bill is an absolute reflection of a corrupt campaign finance system. The billionaires invest hundreds of millions of dollars in candidates and in elections, and in this bill, this piece of legislation, their investment is paying off. So, what are they getting? Well, the top 1% is receiving $975 billion in tax breaks. Further, and this is really quite unbelievable, the wealthiest 0.2% receive a $211 billion estate tax break. $211 billion for the top 0.2%. In that provision, 99.8% of Americans get zero. Further, large corporations in this bill get a $918 billion tax break. That is what the 1% and the wealthy campaign contributors get.
I just want to say, okay, like that's all bad and stuff, but it.
No, I actually kind of like. I think that this is. I think that he's actually very much centering the fact that this is class war, and that
Right. Yeah.
through state control, the capitalist class is just taking more and more. It's a massive transfer. I mean, to call it a transfer of wealth is too innocuous.
Yeah, it's looting. It's basically
It's
just
the looting. You know,
Yeah.
they're using the state to loot and to loot any of the wealth that the working class has. So I think he's being clear on that. Thus far, I don't find the statement too bad. I don't know what you
right.
guys.
Yeah, we'll keep watching.
So here's what you get, assuming you're not a billionaire. This bill throws over 16 million people off of the health insurance they have by slashing Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act by over $1.1 trillion. So, $1 trillion in tax breaks for the 1%, $1 trillion in cuts in Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act. Further, it forces millions of Medicaid recipients to pay a $35 copayment every time they visit a doctor. So what is the impact of all this? What happens when you throw 16 million people off health care, you impose a $35 copayment? Well, what the Yale School of Public Health and the University of Pennsylvania estimate is that if this reconciliation bill is enacted, and it's unbelievable for me to say this, but this is what they are telling us, this is what they have studied. If this bill goes through and all these healthcare cuts take place, over 50,000 Americans will die unnecessarily each and every year.
Every year.
50,000 Americans. In other words, this bill is a horrific death sentence for low and working class, low income and working class Americans.
They're killing
Further,
them.
if this legislation is enacted,
social murdering.
rural hospitals all over the country that are already struggling would be forced to shut down. It would also make massive cuts to community health centers and nursing homes. In other words, this legislation is the most significant attack on the healthcare needs of the American people in the modern history of our country. So, our healthcare system is broken, it's dysfunctional, and they make it even worse. And that's not all. This bill wipes out nutrition assistance for millions of hungry kids at a time when we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of nearly any major nation on earth. This bill will also make it much harder for working class kids to receive the higher education they need by cutting education by some $350 billion. At a time when the planet is struggling with climate change, heat waves now all over the world, this bill decimates investment in energy efficiency. And
yeah, that's another thing I forgot to mention was there's like all these attacks on clean energy where they're basically like not only do they like remove like all of like Biden's like kind of like tax breaks and incentives for clean energy, but they like basically punish clean energy and like incentivize the you know, like oil and fossil fuel stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah. And
Diloar is very that's I agree. I mean,
yeah, it just doesn't make any sense.
well, we were saying how earlier, like, there's this kind of weird, like, I mean, this is not the exact use of the term Führerprinzip, but like the Führer makes all the decisions. And here there's like a weird corollary, which is like whatever decision the Führer makes, you must love him. And like that's kind of what it is.
Killing me.
Huh?
Even if it means it kills you. Like,
yeah, I mean, like
to death.
I was joking that like Trump could like shoot some random hog's mom in the face and they'd be like, I still love you. You know what I'm saying? Like it's
there are Trump voters who've had family members deported who like still support him.
It's unbelievable. You know what I'm saying? So we'll see like if living standards take a hit and if people are socially murdered because of this legislation, whether or not that'll affect his approval. But it's pretty demoralizing to see that Trump can just engage in vicious class war and still maintain a lot of support amongst the people that he's gonna fuck over. It's just what the hell? Yeah.
I would hope they turn against him. You can't eat ideology, right? You do need to be, but I also think it's too abstract for a lot of people to actually see the connection between, you know, their grandma on Medicaid who died and whatever Trump is doing. You would think it'd be pretty clear, but I don't know.
You know, there's a good point that a lot of this stuff that Trump is destroying is stuff that the business sector like welcomed.
Yeah, I mean,
it really just seems like it's just the cronies of Trump are the capitalists who are basically just benefiting from this stuff. But anyway, let's see what else Bernie has to say.
Sustainable energies like wind and solar. If you are concerned about how the United States keeps getting into never-ending wars,
well,
this bill makes a bad situation even worse by handing out another $150 billion to the Pentagon, a 15% increase in an already bloated Pentagon budget. Now, I want to applaud all of the Democrats, every single one of them, who strongly oppose this
doing
bill.
The bare minimum.
And I want to congratulate two Republicans, Senators Paul and Senator Tillis, for voting with the Democrats in opposition to proceeding on this bill. But here is something really interesting and quite telling about where the Republican Party is today. When Senator Tillis of North Carolina indicated that he would vote against the bill, he was lambasted on social media by Trump, and he was threatened with a primary. He actually did not do what Trump wanted him to do. Is there anything in this world that is worse than that? Today, Senator Tillis announced that he would not seek re-election. So it is pretty clear to me, and I would hope to every American, that the Republican Party of today does not tolerate any independent thought.
The Democratic Party.
One might have
so much
believed
independent thought.
Well, that's what really annoys me about his shtick.
Yeah.
Is that all of this equally applies to the party you've chosen to caucus with.
Yeah.
I mean, like, basically everything he said up until he talked about the two-party system was good. And he was just kind of making clear, maybe not exactly in the terms we want, what this bill does. But yeah, everything that has to do with like actually what do we do or like who do we blame is just like, come on, man. Like, what did the Democrats do? I didn't see anything.
Right. The Democrats have connections to labor unions. Why aren't they calling for strikes or something?
Right.
You know, like
God.
Why aren't they doing anything except putting up nominal opposition? Like,
Yeah.
do something, organize something.
If this is
Members
social
of Congress
murder in
were
a period of like an exceptional period where these people love to scream fascism and the death of democracy, why are they not going outside the borders of civility and asking for civil unrest? At a minimum, like they're going to fetishize Martin Luther King, like some weird notion they have about him, and Gandhi. They should be asking for civil disobedience or making calls for it. They're doing nothing.
yeah.
Debates on the Senate floor or in the House is not sufficient.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
But anyway, I think there's 2 minutes left of this, so let's see if he mentions ICE once.
elected to represent their constituents, to do what they thought right for their constituents. But that's not what it is in the Republican Party right now. The sole function of Republican members of Congress is just to tell Donald Trump how brilliant he is, how infallible he is, how great he is, put up a statue of him on Mount Rushmore. Oh my God. And if any Republican, like Senator Tillis, suggests otherwise, they will be politically destroyed. This is pathetic, and it has all of the hallmarks of the kind of authoritarian society that Trump wants to take us into. Dissent is simply not tolerated anymore within Republican ranks. I don't have to tell anybody that this is an extremely difficult moment in American history. Trump and the oligarchs have unlimited wealth. They have a great deal of power and they want more. But there is something that we have. And we saw that just last week in the recent mayoral primary in New York City. So what you had is one candidate supported by all of the big money interest, all of the oligarchs, but you had the other candidate who was supported by ordinary people. And guess who won? The guy, Mr. Mamdani, who was supported by rank and file New Yorkers, won the election. So I think what we can learn from that is that if we stand together and not let Trump and his friends divide us up based on our religion or where we were born or our sexual orientation or the color of our skin, if we stand together, we can beat the oligarchs. And let me tell you, in this moment in history, that is exactly what we've got to do.
Stand without our oligarchs to beat their oligarchs.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the whole message isn't awful, but what really annoyed me about that was just not mentioning the $170 billion to ICE.
Also, Carlos said it. Like, it's kind of like, fight the oligarchs that support the Republican Party to vote for the representatives of the oligarchs that are on our side. It's like,
right.
What the fuck is that? Stop being a hypocrite. You know what I'm saying? Then help build a real working class party or movement.
That's just what annoys me the most about his pitch is like, I get it. I understand the rhetorical, what he has to do. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, then stand with the Democrats to fight the Republicans. I'm like, well, how would I do that?
Yeah. I mean, it's literally just. So, yeah, the other thing you're saying, Donald, is like not one mention about ICE. He's been capitulating on the anti-migrant stuff a lot.
Yeah.
And the irony, therefore, is rich because he's saying don't let Trump divide us. But then this is like one of the most important divisions being.
Yeah, I know. It's like he says don't let Trump divide us, but how can you like not mention ICE and mention the Gestapo that is dividing, that physically divides people, right?
Yeah. So it's like, and that also is like the tip of the spear of just like the destruction of whatever bourgeois norms of legality. Really a glaring omission.
He mentions all the military funding, and
oh yeah, that's the third part of the bill that I guess we have yet to get to, which is the massive increase in the Pentagon's already bloated budget. I mean, the Pentagon gets already like $1 trillion a year. It's incredibly inefficient because they bloat it so that defense contractors can just
Right.
pillage the state for infinite sums of money. And they're just like adding to that problem. And now they're saying they're going to build the Golden Dome thing.
Yeah.
What is the Golden Dome?
You didn't hear about it's like some missile defense system that like spans the whole continent of the US, and like
It's the American version of the Iron Dome, basically.
it's
Which
just, of
Yeah,
course,
that works so well for Israel, huh?
yeah, of course,
Yeah.
Trump is like, we got to make it better than iron. It's better than iron. The thing that my entire house is gilded in gold. Gotta have it be the gold dome. Like, it's just like, this guy is a monkey, dude. I swear. Like, he's
That kind of reminds me of SDI, the Reagan SDI.
Oh yeah, no, it's Star Wars 2.0.
But like they have it. From what I know, like it's very much also like Star Wars because there's like no prototype for it. There's like no design. There's like no science that's been done on it. Really.
A continental missile defense system? Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever heard of that either.
Basically, they're like, here's 200 billions to some aspirational sci-fi project. No idea how long it'll take to develop. No clear guidelines on what the ends are. So it basically just means, once again, it's just a check.
There's something about that aspect of this state is actually what reminds me of, like, remember Marxist analysis of Napoleon regime in the 18 Brumaire, how he was talking about how like it collects all of these grifters and like basically people who suck at the tea.
Yeah,
it's the same sort of thing here. It's just like, well, we'll give all this fancy name to shit and give out all this money for nothing, essentially.
Yeah,
like
it's actually really frustrating because then you have like this whole discourse that gets repeated anytime you ask for anything, where it's like, but the grifters are stealing unemployment and they're stealing Social Security and they're stealing, and it's like, meanwhile you have these defense contractors that are grifting American taxpayers out of trillions of dollars. Trillions. I mean, like, if you every single time they do they do accounting for the Pentagon, there's just like trillions of dollars. They have no idea where it went.
Yeah.
Just missing.
I wonder where.
It's all in the pockets of some Mali dealer in Tel Aviv.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like they're always like, the right wing is always talking about just like fraud, and it's like the greatest fraud that is perpetrated every single day that like costs American people more than anything by far is the fraud that comes from military contractors just pillaging and looting the state. Fucking Golden Dome. We need hospitals. We need schools. We need
Well, that's the secret to the missing state capacity right there. If you have to pay contractors 3-4 times what you would have to pay a government agency to do anything, nothing's getting done.
Nothing.
Well,
they have an interest to not complete things, and insofar as they have something constituting a monopoly, they can also just charge whatever they want. And then the people who work in the state either worked for them or in some way deeply influenced for them, and they'll write whatever check. I mean, like, Dick Cheney stepped down from like being in the chair of Halliburton, but Halliburton had like its most profitable year ever with the invasion of Iraq. It's not subtle, It's really not subtle. It's infuriating.
Well, the bright side is this is all leading to the decay of the effectiveness of the U.S. military. So,
I mean, as we saw with their glorious March parade.
Yeah, and as we saw with their failure to make Yemen submit to the...
Yeah, you can't make the Yemenis do anything.
They lost 3 planes to the Houthis, bro.
Bro, like the poorest nation in the Middle East by far.
Amazing stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it's also a testament to the courage and bravery of the Yemenis.
Oh, absolutely.
Honestly. But yeah, so it's just like the military is such a problem, and it's this parasite on American life that is infuriating. Really, it's just a parasite. Yeah, this bill is just like, my God. My God, dude, Golden Dome. What are they even doing, bro?
You know, it's funny because we mentioned Star Wars, right, and how it was kind of just like this sci-fi project that they threw money at, and
Yeah.
you know why that was the case. And this
No.
goes back to LaRouche.
Oh my God, Donald.
I'm not joking. LaRouche was
You
involved.
were going to bring up LaRouche. There is a 100% chance that when you're hanging out with Donald, LaRouche will come up. No, but I'm curious to hear the LaRouche connection.
Yeah, no, LaRouche in the 1980s, he because he was involved in promoting nuclear fusion energy, and he set up like a whole front group of like that ended up actually recruiting some like prominent like nuclear scientists and stuff in the late 1970s. And then he got some of these people to like join the Reagan administration and get jobs for the strategic defense initiative, and basically like a bunch of the LaRouche people were like basically doing like deep cover entryism in the Reagan administration and like lobbying for the Star Wars program. And so there's like a weird like LaRouche Reagan Star Wars connection.
Bro, LaRouche is crazy, dude.
Yeah, it's really crazy.
He basically founded his own little CIA.
Yeah, he basically founded a private CIA that did like deep entryism in the actual CIA and like influenced the Reagan administration.
I'm telling
It's like Palantir before Palantir.
Yeah,
it's nuts. Well, I mean, Donald, as I said, when you're hanging out with Donald, there's
yeah.
a chance
Well,
to come up.
thing is like the cranks and the weirdos of American history often kind of like see the future and end up like kind of, you know, because LaRouche's policy, the tariffs, the Trump tariffs, that's straight out of like LaRouche's kind of like ideal of like how to do economics.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, like the whole like idea of the American system and like reindustrializing America through tariffs and like that that was like how like when LaRouche like moved away from Marxism, that was like kind of like his first kind of like
big
economic model was like in re-embracing like Hamiltonian economics and the protectionists of 19th century America. So I don't know. There's a lot of like weird LaRouche stuff that that kind of seeps into MAGA. Was Pat Buchanan involved with LaRouche? The Liberty Lobby was, and I think the Liberty Lobby people like Willis Cardo kind of overlapped with Pat Buchanan. So I think there is a connection there, I think.
Also, Brett, I like your comment. It is a plague. Yeah. It's this big it's this plague that just hurts the whole world. That is the Pentagon. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, of course, there's LaRouche is involved with everything.
I mean, it's just like I said, like there's a thing in American history where the kind of weirdos and misfits can kind of point to the future.
Well, the guys in the John Birch Society.
Right. The John Birch Society is a lot of the rhetoric of the John Birch Society is kind of magnified.
Yeah.
But one thing I do want to, there's a fundraiser that I've been promoting for some comrades in Gaza. And I did want to boost it on here before we move on to another topic. But it's this one, help Hussein and his friends help families in Gaza. I've been pushing this on Twitter, but I also wanted to promote this on the stream as well. Unfortunately, a member of their team was killed, I believe last night, trying to get aid in Gaza. So, and this is happening every day. People are just getting killed and getting aid.
Allah Yarma.
Yeah, it's very terrible what's happening, and like I say, I mean,
are they able to get any aid in, or is it still?
I think there's limited amounts of aid, and people are basically just trying to ration what they can and get what they can from the limited supplies. But and I will say, every time I've reposted this on Twitter, I've noticed new donations have come in.
Yes,
So.
yeah,
So definitely, if you're, please share this. This is the website on Chuffed or Chuff, or whatever you say it. So yeah, please share this and share with any big name accounts that and please and keep this campaign going because we're here in America our government is not going to stop supporting this stuff because they've made it clear they're not going to listen to us. So honestly, the least we can do is donate and help support people in Gaza who are doing community organizing.
Yeah,
Trying
absolutely.
to help people to survive.
Yeah.
But yeah, please spread this and help people out. And I know the guy, some of the people running it, and they're solid folks. So yeah. Horrible stuff is going on. Every fucking day, it's just more horror stories.
Yeah, they said the most, I mean, of the many disgusting things. This the Gaza Humanitarian Agency, or whatever the fuck they call it, just this front group set up by the IDF and the US, and they're just like corralling people to these humanitarian sites, and every day you just read like 100 Palestinians killed at the quote unquote humanitarian site. I mean, the cruelty and just they set up a quote unquote humanitarian org to corral people to then just shoot them. What the fuck is that? And apparently there's like well documented evidence that they're slipping like oxys in the food. So, you know, they're giving them this food that's just like contaminated with like just opiates that are gonna get them addicted and kill them. And it's just like, what is that?
It's just sadism.
It's just Nazi shit. It's just awful. Unbelievable.
And hold on, I'm going to put the URL for that fundraiser up on the screen again.
A couple of days ago, Israel's MFA boasted sending 3,000 trucks since May. And I counted 66 tracks a day, with 200 being a number below, which, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Israelis, you know, you'll see some of their bullshit propaganda where they're lying. Oh, we sent aid in, but it's just complete bullshit. If you talk,
you know, before the open genocide, they were already calorie counting the amount of food they would let in to Gaza to like survival level. So basically everyone and before the war was already malnourished. And now it's just I can't imagine. It's probably so much worse, a starvation level. I mean, you give a tiny bit of food and then say, look, we're sending in aid, but it's makes no difference, really. It's just
Yeah, I don't know if anyone saw this, but the Financial Times reported on this Boston consulting group and the Tony Blair Institute were involved in consulting on basically how to ethnically cleanse Gaza. And,
yeah, I mean, Tony Blair is a fucking ghoul.
Yeah,
fuck that guy.
The idea of like consulting private companies as how do we most efficiently starve people is
unbelievable. I mean,
it's beyond ghoulish, bro.
I mean, imagine like working 12 hours a day, like, oh, like, you know, this many calories to kill. It really is just like Eichmann banality of evil shit, you know? Yeah, so it's just
yeah, it's the technocratic, like these technocratic people in suits just sitting down and doing PowerPoint presentations on the exact amount of calorie deficiency that you're going to need to impose on these people in order to force them to leave their homes, and the smallest amount of money that you can. It's just
sickening. It's sickening.
Yeah, I just don't understand how anyone can go to a J job like this. It's
yeah, I mean, you have to be somewhere like a sociopath. I mean, really, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know. The West, it's not going to come back from this.
No.
It's not going to come back from this.
I mean, already, like, you know, as someone who, if you read even a little bit about imperialism, you never really had much high regard for the West, and you've always understood that it's expert in trafficking and hypocrisy. But now I think much of the world out, you know, very clearly, very, very clearly. You know, I mean, if you've read about imperialism, you know that take one instance of many, the Congo, it was done under the auspice that they would spread Christianity and civilize the Congolese. And what you get instead is genocide, mass forced labor, mass mutilation, just systematic sadism. So you know that the West has always been very good in saying something and doing another.
Right. And I think the difference is, I think, like after World War II, the West, you know, quote unquote or whatever, like they create this whole world system of rights-based international orders, like, and obviously we have to do some genocides in Vietnam and Korea and other places in order to defeat communism. But once we defeat communism, the idea is that we've created this humanitarian human rights world order that, you know, and obviously it's totally it's a total hypocrisy and bullshit, you know, as we see with Iraq. But even when we do, you know, imperialism, it's under this guise of like spreading democracy and stuff. Whereas the Gaza genocide, I think there's absolutely no way to spin it as that. There's no way that you can spin this as like,
well, they've been trying really hard, the right wing, like really hard to make it about defending Western civilization.
Right, but in the end, like it just, when you actually like press them on their end goal, it just comes out with like AI movies of like Trump and Netanyahu like sitting on the Gaza Riviera or whatever. Like in the end, it just comes down to like old-fashioned colonial looting and ethno-supremacy.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious at this point. We should
So
probably.
I think when I say like the West isn't going to come back from this, I don't mean like, you know, our reputation is going to be like tarnished and like we're going to have to like reassert like our good reputation. I think we're going to go on a path of imperialist barbarism from this. Like there's no returning back to this idea of human rights and of global liberal equality that the West was somehow upholding. You know, I think this is basically the end of like any kind of false premise that Western imperialism was some kind of, you know, humanitarian rights-based world system. Basically, I think this is opening a new era of just open colonial looting and
It's demoralizing. Shit is horrible. Maybe we should look at what we were going to look at too. We're going to look at Peter Teal now.
Right. So I think that also kind of.
Oh God. The ghouls keep multiplying.
Well, the New York Times keeps giving them platforms.
Right. Can they invite us on or something? I don't know. Well, not us, but I don't know. Someone else.
But I want to mention real quick, but yeah, the U.S. military has already assisted the lack of meaningful popular action about this means that they have zero limits about what they can do in the future, namely China. Yeah, that's basically, yeah.
Is that so? Like, where did they assess that? I'd actually like to see that.
Yeah. Plus, I don't think that's entirely accurate because two things. One, there has been movement, especially in the beginning. It's not adequate, I know, but the problem is more that there's no effective mechanism to translate that kind of spontaneous activity into real meaningful resistance.
There's no political agency.
Yeah, there's no political agency. And then secondly, there has been a like seismic shift in people's views on Israel, like seismic. I mean, like the vast majority of people who identify as Democrats are just completely abhor what's going on. So it's not as if like, that's also why much of the right wing and the Zionists are panicking and turning to just repeating anti-Semitism over and over again and trying to cancel people about, you know, marking African American on their application.
Yeah.
It's because they know that they're losing support. So
I think this expresses like a frustration with protest tactics specifically, because we didn't have, I mean, they were giant protests across the world.
Giant. There still are. There still are.
Yeah, of course. I don't mean to suggest they aren't, but what I'm saying is there's a limit to them, obviously. Like without a political agency that can translate it into political action, you're gonna be stuck protesting. It's not gonna do anything.
Yep. I mean, the question is like, let's say we did have an effective org, what would we do? Well, I mean, quite frankly, just disrupt shit.
I mean, yeah, at the very least, prevent the shipment of weapons,
Yeah.
right? Like out of
Disrupt
ports,
Yeah.
raise consciousness among people that work at ports or whatever
Yeah, I
to
agree.
do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's be honest. If let's say every single shipment was stopped from the U.S. and Britain to Israel, the war would be over because they'd have no ammunition left, like even for
Right.
small arms, much less anything else. So, yeah, no, exactly. We could actually start effectively blocking transport of arms, but it's been done, but only sporadically. Yeah.
But yeah, the protest movement went as far as it could in the sense of inducing that seismic shift on Palestine that you were talking about, but they're not going to stop a war.
No,
There has to be an actual disruption for that to occur.
Yeah, there has to be. It's it's shocking. It's really
Yeah, I mean, there has been a shift in consciousness, but it's not enough.
Yeah, Brett, you're absolutely correct. I mean, they're a way to get attention, but they aren't a solution. They're a way to also quote unquote count your forces. Make it public and clear that you can take a certain position, which gives people courage. They also should be an opportunity to educate and propagandize, right? So, and yeah, the greatest slogan of the last decade.
Yeah, death to the IDF.
Maybe the greatest slogan ever made. Which, by the way, I love all the like pearl clutching about like these people saying this shit. They're having a literal, like, the story is the genocide that's going on, like tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, people just wiped off the earth. The majority of them children and civilians, innocent people. And somehow the problem is some offensive chant. Like, that's the problem in the
Well,
world.
now they're fully criminalizing Palestine action in the UK, actually, as Kilgore brings up with
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah, and the way that basically the whole Labour Party voted for it was just fucking terrifying.
disgusting. Yeah.
Basically such little dissent on this.
Yeah. I mean, the British, so America sucks. And the British are really close. Like they're really, in some ways they suck more. Britain sucks. Like just horror.
Yeah, no, they have worse free speech than we do for sure. They have no equivalent to like the First Amendment.
Yeah, they have very strong libel laws.
Yeah. Though Trump said that Bob Villain doesn't get to come to America because of what they said at Glastonbury.
Consider it a favor done.
Yeah, consider it a favor.
You know what?
Yeah, bro.
But it's getting so bad in Britain. Even Corbyn's like, I'm done with the Labour Party.
Well, I heard conflicting.
Oh, he's been done with the Labour Party, but there was another person who was done with the Labour Party.
Zahra Sultana, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess she said that she was going to form a new party with Corbyn, but Corbyn didn't actually agree to this, and so there's some.
I knew it. As soon as I heard it, I was like,
I don't know the full story, but
we don't know. It's not clear because
Yeah.
I thought that like at first people were relatively confident that they did have an agreement. Now there's some indication that he might be backsliding, and it's just unclear, and we need to wait until we can get more information. But yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about, what were we going to talk about now? We were going to talk
Peter
about
Teal. Yeah, so Ross Douthat interviews Peter Teal, who is
Can I just say real quick that the format of all of these New York Times interviews has been, here's the worst person in history. Let's see what he thinks.
Yeah, for real. Here's 2 hours of uncontested fucking interview. Or like
this guy's views are complete dog shit. Let's hear what he thinks about race.
like literally like bringing on like I don't want to sound like a total dweeb, but like fucking Sauron or some shit, and like being like, what do you think? What do you think about humanity? He's like, well, I want to eliminate all of it. It's like, okay,
let's ask Adolf Eichmann about the Jews.
yeah, for instance, like Mengele Hitler face, like what? Like that's gonna be the next guest, bro. Like Jesus Christ, dude. Oh my god. Yeah, no, these interviews are just infuriating. But I do like that the New Yorker, like, we didn't talk about it, but they did the expose or the interview with Curtis Yarvin, and he came across looking like the biggest fucking lame like ever.
Yeah. No, I'm glad they do these interviews because honestly, like they just letting these people talk like does a good job at kind of exposing them.
We should get Thoreau to do
Louis Thoreau goes to Silicon Valley,
right, and just have them like hang themselves. Just give them the noose and have them hang themselves. That'd be great.
Like that kind of my problem with this dude thought interview is like he talks too much. He doesn't just let Teal just like talk and expose what a ghoul he is. He has to like keep like talking and like
yeah. And these kinds of right wing people are highly conscious of esoteric versus exoteric.
Right.
Like what you tell the dumb masses.
Right. Hiding your power level.
So yeah. What you tell the dumb masses versus what you say to your fellow elite or whatever, the elites.
Isn't Ross Douthat their like right wing commentator?
Yeah, he's like their guy that they have as like their right wing interviewer and their like token rightoid basically. So yeah, and he's probably in on all this stuff, and he's basically like trying to predify these people to.
This okay. I'm gonna have a hard time with this. Let me go grab a decaf, and so I can just drink something somewhat soothing before.
Go get your.
I need my drugs, so I'll be right back.
I need my drugs in order to survive, Peter Teal.
I don't know what the policy of drugs on stream are, but
yeah, what is the policy? You're allowed to smoke weed on stream if you have.
I'm not sure because if I could, then I would.
I think people like drink beers on stream. I think.
All I got is weed. But this guy also doesn't look very good. Like
he looks like a reptile. He looks like he looks like he's a reptilian. Like he's the kind of guy who's got me thinking maybe David Icke has a point.
Well, isn't he supposed to be one of those people who like injects himself with other people's blood?
Yes.
Doesn't seem like it's working.
Supposedly injects himself with the blood of young people to keep himself young.
A literal vampire.
Yeah. Yeah. And as someone mentions, the title of the piece, Peter Teal and the Antichrist. Yeah, he's really into René Girard.
Oh,
he's like this French theorist who has this whole theory called mimetic desire. And I haven't read. What was that?
It's always the French.
Yeah. I haven't read Girard, so I can't really explain him as like someone as an expert. My understanding is that like he kind of thinks that there's like part of human nature is that we're always trying to kind of mimic each other's desires, and this creates like this kind of insolvable like sense of rivalry amongst humanity that can only be solved through a kind of symbolic act of sacrifice, which he calls a scapegoat. And for Girard, Christianity is kind of like as a revolutionary.
Sorelian, right? It's like it's another play on the Sorelian theme with these people.
Yeah, maybe he is influenced by Sorel. But yeah, there's kind of like this idea that Christ kind of like ends the cycle of like sacrifice and scapegoating through his sacrifice. He ends like the cycle of scapegoating, I guess. And so Peter Teal has like this kind of weird understanding of Christianity, like influenced by Girard.
Is he a Christian?
Yes, he's a Catholic.
He is a Christian. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, he's a Catholic naturally.
Yeah. This Girard guy. I'm not gonna lie. His thinking kind of sounds interesting. And
no, he is really interesting, and I don't think like he himself is like a rightoid. Or like you have to like be a rightoid to like learn from Girard or whatever, but like he's definitely someone that like a lot of these right wingers are fascinated by, and they're really fascinated by this theory of like the scapegoat and mimetic desire.
Well, mimetic desire, right?
Yeah,
that's like really kind of what is central to his thinking.
Well, what is that supposed? Is that just because I understand the idea of like the memes or whatever, but or in its scientific sense, but
no, mimetic is in imitating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right. I guess my thing is, what's supposed to be the significance of that revelation or insight? Like we all imitate each other, okay?
Well, it creates rivalry because we mimic each other's desires, and so we imitate each other. And so what we desire is based not on like I guess the inherent like qualities of like the object, but like on the fact that other people want things, and so that leads us to like engage in rivalries with people. That creates like inherent like
And
conflict.
from what I understand, this conflict generating tendency of mimetic desire can only be checked by the creation of a scapegoat or of a sacrificial object or subject. And so that's why Gerard really liked Christianity, because
Yeah.
that's what Jesus
This is what you were
represents.
mentioning. Okay.
Yeah, he's
Yeah, where you were gone, I was kind of explaining how like he sees like the sacrifice of Jesus is kind of like what ends the cycle of
Yeah.
scapegoating or whatever.
it's a check, or kind of yeah, it's like a check on that
I mean, that is kind of interesting.
the stabilizing tendency of mimetic desire. It is. It
is interesting. I will say though, like there is a tendency to always be like, well, and this is why Christianity is the perfect answer. It seems a little, it's trite. It's like,
Yeah, and it's like it doesn't seem like a very scientific theory of society. Like
It's
it
kind of-
seems like something that's like interesting as like a literary device, and even as like something you can kind of like maybe see in history, but as like an actual scientific theory of society, like I don't think there's.
Yeah, I don't see any necessary connection between learning a society and having a scapegoat necessarily.
Right, but I mean, you can definitely see like scapegoat behavior all throughout
Absolutely.
society. You can definitely see that kind of mimicry of desire and creating a rival. I think that's definitely a part of human behavior. That there's definitely something to that. But
It seems as a causal hypothesis for scapegoating, it seems very difficult to operationalize. in the
right,
sense of how do you test and falsify it?
Does that not strike you as like a kind of common tendency in right-wing philosophical thinking, is to take one small aspect of human, experience, or like in this case, the mimicry aspect, and then sort of blow it up as the great evil, like to blow it up as the thing that's causing everything else?
right.
Well, I mean, yeah. Well, I think that's kind of one of the things about philosophy is that it's a laboratory it's a laboratory for concepts in a way, right?
Right.
So, it's not like anything goes, because especially in modern philosophy, there are certain like standards of like rigor, coherence, clarity that apply, but it's a space where you're supposed to be able to kind of think grand things, right? So, and I think that's kind of an example of it. And yeah, as I said, it's you can generate this philosophical idea, but then like, is it a piece of social science? It seems very difficult to operationalize as, to test it, basically.
Well, these group of people really seem to be motivated by these kind of grand ideas.
Yeah.
Much.
Oh yeah.
Without really thinking them through.
Well, I mean, there's also a place for like, there's something that Richard Feynman used to say. It's something he said in the context of physics, but he said too much rigor is rigor mortis. And I think he's right about that. When you start only focusing on rigor, you lose the kind of imaginativeness and creativity that you sometimes need to like come up with not only an understanding of the world, but a kind of like I don't want to say a myth, but a kind of just like heroic image and horizon to live up to. So I think in that way it actually is I think it's quite smart for them to have like an ambitious philosophy. I mean, let's be honest, like OG Marxism is really ambitious. It's in many ways, some parts of it are utopian. Like, will we ever live in the kind of super abundant society that Marx believed would come about? No, we're not. I mean, let's just be honest. We'll never live for physical reasons. We will never live, most likely, in a society where, like, and you can have anything at no cost.
Right.
So,
everything is free and teleported to you instantaneously. Like,
yeah, I mean, like, unless there's a laser gun that can change the submolecular structure of things and create things out of nothing, then yeah, we're going to be constrained in that way. So, but anyways, let's watch. Do you have
let's watch what Teal has to say, because
you have some greatest hits of this shit? Because I'm not going to spend like.
Yeah, I'm gonna skip through, but I think what he starts out talking about, stagnation, I think is important, because I think it kind of exposes some of the thought that is influencing the bizarre, like, anti-science stuff that's going on with the Trump administration.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, that's another thing we didn't talk about. Like, yours truly might be fucked because of this.
Yeah, so there is an ideology behind this anti-science crusade.
Okay, let's see.
To interesting times.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Thanks for being here. So I want to start by taking you back in time about 13 or 14 years. You wrote an essay for National Review, the conservative magazine, called The End of the Future. And basically the argument in that essay was that the dynamic, fast-paced, ever-changing modern world was just not nearly as dynamic as people thought. And that actually we entered a period of technological stagnation, that sort of digital life was a breakthrough, but not as big a breakthrough as people had hoped, and that sort of the world was kind of stuck, basically. Yes. And you weren't the only person to make arguments like this, but it had a special potency coming from you because you were a Silicon Valley insider who had gotten rich in the digital revolution. So I'm curious, in 2025, right, do you think that diagnosis...
This game...
Damn it! Get premium!
You're not ready.
Can't escape ads. Or you get the ad block. You don't have to get it.
Wow, this can't be...
Donald,
save us!
Free us from marketing.
You're in the middle of this,
bro.
They still have this game? Is this Eve?
Yeah, it's Eve. Have you ever played this shit?
You're seeing intrigue.
I played it like
still holds
15 years ago.
Yes, I still broadly believe in the stagnation thesis. It was never an absolute thesis. So the claim was not that we were absolutely completely stuck. It was in some ways a claim about the velocity had slowed. It wasn't, zero, but that we were, I don't know, from 1750 to 1970, 200 plus years were periods of accelerating change where we're, relentlessly, we're moving faster. The ships were faster, the railroads were faster, the cars were faster, the planes were faster. It culminates in the Concorde and the Apollo missions, and then that in all sorts of dimensions, things had slowed. There was, I always made an exception for the world of bits. So we had, computers and software and internet and mobile internet. And then, the last 10, 15 years, you had crypto and the AI revolution, which I think is in some sense pretty big. But the question is, is it enough to really get out of this generalized sense of stagnation? And there's an epistemological question you can start with on the the Back to the Future essays. How do we even know whether we're in stagnation or acceleration? Because one of the features of late modernity is that people are hyper specialized, and so can you say that we're not making progress in physics unless you've devoted half your life to studying string theory? Or what about quantum computers?
Well,
or what about
pause it real quick.
Cancer?
Pause it real quick. No, string theory. No one has made any progress in string theory because it's just bullshit. Like, it's just not a theory of.
Like, this is the kind of point I wanted to make. Like, he's a guy that got rich off of technology, but he doesn't actually seem to understand like how technology develops and how it's diffused.
Yeah.
He seems to be complaining like, well, between 1750 and 1950, we had so much amazing progress. And now since then, it's not been that fast. And it's like, well, yeah, dude, because 200 years from 1750 to 1950, you're developing all this technology, like it's leapfrogging basically. At some point, you're gonna slow down. Like most of the technology in the last 70 years has been about miniaturization, right? The transistor and things like that. Those are all breakthroughs as well. It's just like he seems to be complaining that it hasn't taken the tenor that he would like. Like we're not living in the Jetsons or something.
Also, it's kind of like, what are the conditions for technological growth? And like, I think one of the weaknesses of Marx's theory, well, I shouldn't say this because I'm sure somewhere he talks about it. Whenever anyone says Marx didn't do X, you look somewhere and he did. But I think so in the typical account, the notion is that a huge stimulus for technological change is that in order to increase labor productivity, there needs to be revolutions in the productive forces. But past that, so capital in its relentless pursuit to maximize itself revolutionizes the productive forces. Of course, like from the antecedent of that statement to the consequent, a causal theory of it is left unexplained, right? Or is implicit. And it turns out that, especially in the post-war period, a huge reason for the scientific and technological advances made was the strong role played by the state and by state financing, sometimes for not so great reasons, for military reasons. But that was a huge reason why the US, the Soviet Union, et cetera, made such advances in basic science and in its application and development of technologies. And that support is disappearing. The ruling class, like that's backing, is destroying that. They're destroying that support for the revolutionizing of the productive forces. They're cannibalizing the capacity to revolutionize the productive forces. So that's something I doubt he's going to talk about. He's a fucking libertarian. He's going to say, we just need IBM or whatever to develop technologies. But those are firms. I work with these people. They give us credits to do quantum simulations. They have an interest in not being clear on the critical limits of their systems.
How much of this is actually the social relations of production holding back revolutionizing the forces of production?
Well, it is.
Have you ever heard the thesis that, for example, in Central Europe, basically that after the Black Death, because the Black Death killed so many people, it made labor scarce, right? And so it induced a turn towards wage labor, which then induced a turn towards labor-saving technologies, which, et cetera, et cetera. So, how much of this is just like the modern social relations and infrastructure in society are like, well, it's just not profitable to do these technologies. Like AI is a perfect example of that, actually. AI is still not profitable.
Well, it's also like an expression of the fact that, like, because of political movements, the social relations have modified to the point where property ownership, property owners have more power than ever, not only over labor power, but over the state itself. And they are acting in ways that are eroding the state capacity or the superstructure to promote the development or the revolutionizing of the productive forces. I mean, that's an extremely complex causal claim, but I think that's kind of the story I would start to tell, right? To attack these issues.
It's also worth thinking about like the decadence of the productive forces, the way that like research and technology goes into developing productive forces that are not really useful for humanity.
Oh yeah, at all.
Like cryptocurrency.
Yeah, that's
and,
a good point.
Yeah.
Crappy AI image generation, rather than like developing technology that will help us cope with climate change.
Yeah.
For example,
imagine you gave like 800 billion to the development of nuclear fusion. Might actually be somewhere with it.
Yeah, well, that's
if you have like I'm pushing LaRouche shit, bro. Anyways, let's listen to this fucking ghoul.
Yeah.
Research and biotech and the sort of all these verticals, and then how much does progress in cancer count versus string theory? And so you have to give weightings to all these things. So it's in theory, it's an extremely difficult question to get a handle of, because the fact that it's so hard to answer, that we have ever narrower groups of guardians guarding themselves, is itself cause for skepticism. And so yes, I think broadly we're in this world that's still pretty stuck. It's not absolutely stuck.
Yeah, you mentioned Back to the Future, and we just showed our kids the original Back to the Future, the first one with Michael J. Fox, and of course,
it was like 1955 to 1985,
right.
30 years back, and then the Back to Future 2 was, I think, 1985 to 2015, which is now a decade in the past, and that's where you had flying cars, and the 2015 future.
Why is that the mark?
Is wildly divergent.
The 2015 future did have.
I'm telling you, dude, he's just mad he doesn't live in the Jetsons. I'm telling you, he wants to live in the Jetsons.
Bro, flying car sounds like like a disaster. Fucking just like collisions all over and shit. Like, dude, what?
Yeah.
Why is that the mark of technology? Like, everyone has like their own car, but it flies. That's wow. That's the horizon of humanity.
Well, at least it correctly points out that technological innovation or development is iterative.
Yeah,
it's like, well, we're gonna make a better car. It flies now.
Yeah, and then it also dispenses hamburgers and does healthcare for you. And if you don't meet the productivity quota, you get euthanized and turned into Soylent Green. That's this fucking guy is just Jesus Christ.
But I just don't agree with the premise. Like, technology has advanced a lot in the last 40, 50 years.
Yeah,
it just hasn't advanced in a way that, I guess, there's no flying cars, but
yeah,
I mean, there's electrical vehicles.
Yeah, for real, dude.
Like, what?
No, what we need is flying electric vehicles, man.
This is funny where he talks about like the oppressive, like socialist future where Greta Thunberg is like forcing
States
everyone
has functioned
to
for, the first 200 years of its existence.
So you think that ordinary people won't accept stagnation in the end?
It's
that they will rebel and sort of pull things down around them in the course of that rebellion.
They may rebel, or our institutions don't work. All of our institutions are predicated on growth.
Right. Our budgets are certainly predicated on growth.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you say, I don't know, Reagan and Obama, Reagan was sort of consumer capitalism, which is oxymoronic. It was, you borrow, you don't save money as a capitalist, you borrow money. And Obama was low tax socialism, just as oxymoronic as, the
I don't see any of these things as
Reagan.
oxymoronic.
And I like low tax socialism way better than high tax socialism, but I worry that it's not sustainable. At some point, the taxes go up or the socialism ends. So it's deeply unstable.
What did Obama
that's
do?
why people are.
I know, like, what happened under Obama that made these guys, like, I understand that, like, there was some regulations under Biden that made these people, like, really pissed off, but under Obama, the tech people got all they wanted.
Like, Biden threatened kind of, like, antitrust shit, but, like, never gonna do it. That fucking mummy was never gonna push that shit through. Like, what are they talking about? He's just making unsubstantiated claim after unsubstantiated claim. The level of rigor is worse than our podcast, our stream has 500 viewers. Like, what are you doing? Like, how is this?
That's the thing is, like, these people, like, they think they're so smart and educated and, like, have read all this philosophy, but in the end, like, they're just Fox News chuds.
Go to the Cosmonaut Discord. There's nothing but brainiacs, dog. And I know way more than this idiot.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Not
all
optimistic. They don't think we've hit some stable, the Greta future. Maybe it can work.
This
but
is
we're
the
not yet
Greta
there.
Thunberg. Just to be clear, that's a reference to Greta Thunberg, the activist best known for anti-climate change protests, who, to you, I would say, represents a kind of symbol of a anti-growth, effectively authoritarian, environmentalist-dominated future.
Sure, but we're not there yet. We're not there yet. You know, it'd be like a
there yet.
very
What is
very
this
different
Greta
society if you
Thunberg-
if you
If you
really
actually
stuck-
lived in a
if you-
kind of degrowth, small Scandinavian
yeah,
villages.
I'm not sure it'd be North Korea, but it would be super oppressive.
One thing that's always struck me is that when you have this sense of stagnation, a sense of decadence, right? To use a word that I like to use for it in a society, you then also have people who end up being kind of eager for a crisis, right? Eager for a moment to come along where they can radically redirect society from the path it's on. Because I tend to think that in rich societies, you hit a certain level of wealth, people become very comfortable, they become risk averse, and it's just hard. It's hard to get out of decadence into something new without a crisis. So the original example for me was after September 11th. There was this whole mentality among foreign policy conservatives that we had been decadent and stagnant, and now is our time to, wake up and launch a new crusade and remake the world. And obviously that ended very badly. But something similar.
But it was Bush 43 just told people to go shopping right away.
So it wasn't anti-decadent enough.
for the most part.
But what
So
what
you-
is
there was-
decadence?
there was
in
maybe
this
there
thing?
was
How are they
some,
defining decadence? This conversation is very fashy to me.
Yo, I love AJ. Yeah, he knows Obama's not. Yeah, you're right. First off, and they're two parasites. One,
Yeah, exactly. Two parasites talking
Yeah,
about decadence.
two parasites talking
Yeah.
about decadence.
you have decadence when when this guy gets paid to do whatever he's doing.
But I don't think once they've attempted to actually define what the decadence is that they're referring to.
Well, the reason I went, oh God, when he said decadent is because when decadence is like a central concept.
Well, it kind of sounds like some more rightoid sort of like, well, the people, like.
Oh, I used the term decadence maybe like 10 minutes ago to kind of describe the development of the productive
Right, I understood it
forces.
in that sense, but in the sense that they're talking
Right,
about it,
yeah.
it kind of sounds more spiritual. Like, well,
Exactly.
there's a spiritual decadence,
Right,
and the
right.
people they don't know what it's like to be part of the nation, and we need a war to
Exactly. Like that's like very
weird
much
as fuck.
that's very much a discourse that like you even find in like even people before like Sorel, Oswald Spengler, you can even find kind of like touches of it in Nietzsche. Like it's
Oh yeah, I mean it's all over
exactly.
the right.
Like we would use it in a very different way. It functions in a very different way in our kind of conceptual framework. But yeah, as soon as it becomes spiritual decadence becomes a fucking central concept of a discourse, it's no good, no bueno.
Well, there's a sense in which I think the way they're talking about decadence is they're talking about like the ruling elite has kind of lost a sense of mission, a sense of purpose. There's no real mythos that's kind of uniting the ruling elite and giving it a goal that's kind of uniting the nation and creating this grand civilization.
What's interesting is like, so Ernst Renan, who is a French, he's kind of like thought of as like the French liberal of the late 19th century. Like he very much in many ways pioneered that discourse that like liberal republicanism or quote unquote democracy gave no national project or did not come equipped with a national project, and for that reason had a kind of individualistic and decadent tendency, and was very much like, oh, we need to have a sort of national ethos or whatever. So
right. And then someone like Sorel, he kind of picks up on this and says, well, really, it's the proletariat who can kind of save
decadence.
Decadence.
Yeah. Sorel is actually insane. And a lot of people, like, we're going to talk next week about Sorel. And he's a weird guy. And a lot, even like Burnham gets him very wrong in the historical points. But we're going to talk about James Burnham's The Machiavellians next week. So that's another story. Anyways, let's keep listening to this fucking
these decadent motherfuckers.
Neocon foreign policy enclave in which people were LARPing as a way to get out of decadence. But the dominant thing was Bush 43 people telling people just to go shopping.
So what risks should you be willing to take to escape decadence.
What do you mean?
It does seem like there's a danger here where the people who want to be anti-decadent have to take on a lot of risk. They have to say, look, you've got this nice, stable, comfortable society, but guess what? We'd like to have a war or a crisis or a total reorganization of government and so on. They have to lean into danger, right?
Well, I don't know if I have to answer. I don't know if I have to give you a precise answer, but my directional answer is a lot more.
Yeah.
We should take a lot more risk. We should be doing a lot more. And I don't know, I can go through all these different verticals. It's, if we look at biotech, something like dementia, Alzheimer's, we've made zero progress in 40 to 50 years. People are completely stuck on beta amyloids. It's obviously not working. It's just some kind of a stupid racket where the people are just reinforcing themselves. And so, yes, we need to take way more risk in that department.
Well, I want to ask,
what the hell does that
to
mean?
keep us in the concrete, I want to stay with that example for a minute and ask, okay, what does that mean, saying we need to take more risks in anti-aging?
Yeah, this is
I dare
interesting,
you
actually.
to let me
Oh,
build.
God dang it.
Oh my god.
Here. Yeah, I need to get the ad blocker set up on this.
The
YouTube.
FDA has to step back and say anyone who has a new treatment for Alzheimer's can, go ahead and sell it on the open market. Like, what is risk in the medical space look like?
Yeah, you would take a lot more risk. If you have some
already said
fatal disease, there probably are a lot more risks you can take. There are a lot more risks the researchers can take. Culturally, what I imagine it looks like is early modernity, where people, they thought we would cure diseases. They thought we would have radical.
He just wants
life
no regulations
extension.
for like medical
Immortality that was
testing,
part of the
basically.
project of early modernity. It was Francis Bacon, Condorcet. It was, and maybe it was anti-Christian, maybe it was downstream of Christianity. It was competitive. If Christianity promised you a physical resurrection, science was not going to succeed unless it promised you the exact same thing. But I don't know. I remember 1999, 2000, when we were running PayPal. One of my co-founders, Luke Nosek, he was into Alcor and cryonics, and people should freeze themselves. And we had one day where we took the whole company to a freeze.
Yeah, why don't you just do that? Why don't you just
Immediately.
Cool your body to like fucking
zero Kelvin.
They sell their. Was it just your heads? What was going to be frozen?
You could get a full body or just a
the head.
head.
I do remember
Just the
that.
head was cheap.
It was
remember this,
disturbing
though.
when the dot matrix printer didn't quite work, and so the freezing policies couldn't be printed out. But in retrospect, this was still
Technological stagnation once again, right?
But it was but it's also a symptom of the decline, because in 1999, this was not a mainstream view, but there was still a fringe boomer view where they still believed they could live forever.
See, this is like
Wait.
This is
Wait, I discovered Teal more than 10 years ago. Wait, when I was 18? Like 12 years ago, because I read an article about a startup firm where they were trying to cure death.
no,
yeah,
that's
doing
been his
that.
thing for a
Oh,
while.
he's
is
really
pursuing
into immortality. So why is he back? Has he finally realized that that's not feasible? This guy's
No, he's not bashing.
This guy's
he's
terrified
kind
of death. This guy's terrified of death. He has
yeah.
a
Oh, yeah.
total incapacity to face his finitude. That's very obviously like the animating neurosis of his life.
It's funny because I would argue to him, it's like a ruling, like being so obsessed with trying to stop your own like mortality is actually a symptoms of decadence to me. If of a spiritual decadence,
Right.
Because I feel like you would understand death as a natural order in nature if you I don't know.
Yeah,
It's weird.
I agree.
It's like, if Trotsky was still around, he'd probably have some article where he's like, oh, the social psychology of the ruling class shows that these, like, there's a malaise with these people. Like, they've lost all historical mission.
Yeah.
And so they grasp to these fantasies of colonizing Mars, of living forever, to try to give themselves some sort of historical direction at this point.
Well, there's that one Trotsky quote where he says there's kind of 3 tragedies of humanity: sex, death, and hunger.
Yeah.
Like,
and
like that is kind of the
stagnation is apparently when magic
tragedy.
isn't real. Yeah, basically, and Back to the Future isn't reality.
Yeah.
With the movie from the 80s. Yeah.
But I think like the stagnation stuff he's talking about is interesting because if you look at the science defunding that the Trump administration is doing, it's like it doesn't really make sense from a kind of material interest standpoint, because if you're trying to build the American empire to be the most effective capitalist behemoth in the world and destroy China, like clearly you want to fund science as much as possible.
Yeah, something I don't get about. Well, I mean, I get why like Trump and some of the people around him do that, because I think they fundamentally think that it's the firms who are going to do the science because they're dumb, and
Right.
that this is like government funded research is just another example of like inefficient government. But like they fundamentally just like don't understand how science has been done or is structured in the US since post-war, right? So
Right.
yeah, they have no idea how it works. Like they really don't get it.
Yeah, well, because like Teal's whole thing is like, well, what if we do like put in like another like 10 years of dementia research on the current path and keep funding it? It's not going to go anywhere because of stagnation. There's no point. And to him, like I feel like he's kind of convinced like the Trump administration that there's like we kind of just need to like stop funding our existing science institutions and just like shake up the system completely and like instead like give money to people like Teal and like all these random different venture capitalists.
Yeah, the private sector
and
organized
they're going to like
completely.
Bro, you want to fucking do something for science? Stop making this weird funding system where you have to jump through 80 hoops and write 50 grants so that you can get $10,000.
They don't seem to understand that like most of the big like technological innovations came from state research that was then privatized.
All of them did. Like all of them. Like
right.
All of it. Literally.
But to them, like the current model isn't working. It's because it hasn't cured dementia yet. And so to them, we're just like sinking money into scientific research into a stagnating system. And so to them, like funding existing scientific research is just pointless because it's all stagnating and not going anywhere. So,
I mean, I won't lie. I'll agree on one vague point. Things need to change in American science. I could go on for hours about quote unquote what's wrong or what is wrong, but it certainly isn't to like stop funding all state research immediately, right? That is just ridiculous. The major issue is that in my opinion is the militarization of American science and the commercialization of American science, in the sense that like very much the research programs and projects are funded and shaped by military and or industrial interests, and that is fundamentally perverting our ability to make progress scientifically, basic level of research. So that's there needs to basically be more space, time, and resources for basic forms of research and a very concerted effort for their application to enhance human welfare. And that doesn't exist.
Yeah, and I think obviously that's not what Teal's analysis is.
The fuck does this guy know? He hasn't done one day of scientific research in his life.
That's the thing, is like he's talking, it's just hard to know because of specialization. So you're just hand waving away the fact that you don't really know anything. You're just mad that your science fiction fantasy hasn't come to life yet.
And that was the last generation. And so I'm always anti-boomer, but maybe there's something we've lost even in this fringe boomer narcissism, where there were at least a few boomers who still, believed science would cure all their diseases.
Like you?
No one who's a millennial believes that anymore.
I think there are some people who believe in a different kind of immortality, though, right now. I think part of part of the fascination with AI is connected to a specific vision of transcending limits. And I'm going to ask you about that after I ask you about politics. Because one of the striking things I thought about your original argument on stagnation, which was mostly about technology and the economy, was that it could be applied to a pretty wide range of things.
Incrediwear is the first wearable anti-inflammatory.
Gosh darn it.
Not only does it take away
He's zooted. That's what's up.
For writing that essay, you were interested in seasteading this ideas of essentially building new polities independent of the sclerotic
Network state.
Western world.
But
But then you made a pivot in the 2010s. So you were, one of the few prominent, maybe the only prominent Silicon Valley supporter of Donald Trump. In 2016, you supported a few sort of carefully selected Republican Senate candidates. One of them is now the Vice President of the United States. And my view as an observer of what you were doing was that you were basically being a kind of venture capitalist for politics, right? You were saying, here are some disruptive agents who might change the political status quo, and it's worth a certain kind of risk here. Is that how you thought about that?
There were all sorts of levels. I mean, one level was these hopes that we could redirect the Titanic from the iceberg was heading to, or whatever the metaphor is, really change course as a society. Through political change. Maybe a much narrower aspiration was that we could maybe at least have a conversation about this. When someone like Trump said, "Make America Great Again," okay, is that a positive, optimistic, ambitious agenda, or is it merely, a very pessimistic assessment of where we are, that we are no longer a great country? And I didn't have great expectations about what Trump would do in a positive way, but I thought at least for the first time in 100 years, we had a Republican who was not giving us this syrupy Bush nonsense, and that was not the same as progress, but we could at least have a conversation. In retrospect,
that's interesting because he's basically saying like, well, Trump isn't he doesn't share my exact ideology, but he's someone who would listen to me. You can have a conversation.
More like I can fucking buy him.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not this syrupy Bush nonsense. Okay, he's, he believes in the decadence of Western civilization.
I mean, I think there are limits to how much you can buy him because Musk paid quite a pretty penny for him and didn't get what he wanted in the end.
This is so profoundly uninteresting.
He's a very uninteresting person, I think.
Whatever the metaphor.
10 years ago,
he gave up on his own metaphor like barely a second in. He was like, "Whatever the metaphor, it's your metaphor, dude."
He's trying to be clever, and then he's like, "Oh fuck, I couldn't think of anything." Oh my god.
I'm going to go to some of the most replayed sections. I'm trying
the metaphor for watching this is like having nails driven into my skull by a hammer.
As conformist, maybe that's not the kind of smartness that's going to make a difference.
So do you fear then a plausible future where AI in a way becomes itself stagnationist? That it's like highly intelligent, creative in a conformist way. It's like, the Netflix algorithm. It makes infinite okay movies.
That's already what AI
watch.
is.
It generates infinite okay ideas. It puts a bunch of people out of work and makes them obsolete, but it doesn't. It like deepens stagnation in some way. Is that a fear?
It's
like people just outsource.
It's quite possible that's certainly a risk.
That's certainly a risk. Just
he sounds kind of annoyed. He's like, "Yeah, dude."
I don't think this is a man who's used to having anybody question his agenda ever, even in this very softball way that Ross Douthat, who's, as someone mentioned, is probably aligned with the Orban government in Hungary.
I mean, he's just asking for a clarification. He seems to be annoyed at the fact that, you're not just accepting what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, this guy sucks, dude.
But I guess I guess where I end up is I still think we should be trying AI, and that the alternative is just total stagnation. So yeah, there's sort of all sorts of interesting things going to happen with, okay, maybe drones in a military context are combined with AI, and okay, this is kind of scary or dangerous or dystopian, or it's going to change things. But if you don't have AI, wow, there's just nothing going on. And I don't know, this
guy
like a
sucks.
version of
I
this
know. It's
discussion
just like he's like, yeah, I guess it could be this like scary dystopian, Terminator hellscape with drones and blah blah blah. But if we don't do it, it'll be stagnation. And
it'll just be nothing. It's like, what are you talking about?
He can only say this because he doesn't have to fear of living under the consequences of all this. He knows that he's going to be the guy like in charge of the Skynet, like deciding who gets like exterminated. So obviously the choice is clear to him. But
Bro, the analyses we've given of AI, compare what we've said to this.
I know, compared to like reading the average Cosmonaut article about
like
AI,
fucking, we've had, oh my god,
it's crazy, bro. He's not even really trying to grapple with it.
I know.
I also find him to be so inconsistent because 1 minute he's like, well, this causes stagnation. And then he bringing up like, he's like, well, doesn't AI also cause stagnation when like everyone just depends on AI to do all the thinking for them? And he's like, well, maybe, but that's just a risk we're going to have to take.
Like, why?
It's like, okay, so you don't, I don't know. Like, I don't know why I should care about this, dude. You're not really convincing me that I should care about this.
Oh man, this guy. Just an intellectual mediocrity.
And I don't know, there's like a version of this discussion on the internet where, did the internet lead to more conformity and more wokeness? And yeah, there are all sorts of ways where it didn't lead to quite the cornucopian, diverse explosion of ideas that libertarians fantasized about in 1999. But counterfactually, I would argue that it was still better than the alternative, that if we hadn't had the internet, maybe it would be worse.
People like you are what made the internet
it's better than the alternative, and the alternative is nothing at all. Because here's one place where the stagnationist arguments are still reinforced. The fact that we're only talking about AI, I feel, is always an implicit acknowledgement that but for AI, we are like in almost total stagnation.
But the world of AI is clearly filled with people who, at the very least, seem to have a more utopian, transformative, whatever word you want to call it, view of the technology than you're expressing here, right? And you were mentioned earlier the idea that the modern world used to promise radical life extension and doesn't anymore. It seems very clear to me that a number of people deeply involved in artificial intelligence see it as a kind of mechanism for transhumanism, for transcendence of our mortal flesh, and either some kind of creation of a successor species or some kind of merger of mind and machine. And do you think that's just all kind of irrelevant fantasy? Or do you think it's just hype? Do you think people are trying to raise money by pretending that we're going to build a machine god, right? Is it hype? Is it delusion? Is it something you worry about? I think you would prefer the human race to endure, right?
What a
You're
question.
hesitating.
Yeah, well,
yes?
I don't know. I would.
Oh,
I would.
This is a long hesitation. This is a long hesitation.
There's so many questions implicit
Should
in
the
this.
human race survive?
That includes yourself now.
Yes.
Okay.
But I also would.
Qualification.
I also would like us to radically solve these problems,
Right.
and so it's always
He's smiling because he's like, I'd like to call all the
There's
dysgenic,
DIY.
like.
Well,
sons
I
and
think part of it is an
daughters.
admission that he's not human.
Yeah.
He might be reptilian.
It's a
That's what I'm saying. This guy makes David Icke have a point.
radical transformation where your human natural body gets transformed into an immortal body. And there's a critique of, let's say, the trans people in a sexual context, or I don't know, transvestite is someone who changes their clothes and cross dresses, and a transsexual
you
is
gotta
someone
bring
where you change
trans
your
people
I don't know, penis into a vagina, and we can then debate how well those surgeries work. But we want more transformation than that. It's the critique is not that it's weird and unnatural. It's man, it's so pathetically little. And okay, we want more than cross dressing or changing your sex organs. We want you to be able to change your heart and change your mind and change your whole body. And then Orthodox Christianity, by the
This
way,
guy still a Catholic?
the critique
What?
Orthodox Christianity has of this is these things don't go far enough. Like that transhumanism is just changing your body, but you also need to transform your soul.
Wait, is
You
he
need to
Orthodox?
transform your whole
He's
self.
supposed to be a Catholic, right?
I think he's into some weird heterodox Christianity stuff. I
Because I can tell you right off the bat, this is all very
I don't-
not Catholic.
Yeah,
no, I don't think he's Catholic. I think this sounds like Russian cosmism,
bro. Yeah, it does.
which was like influenced by weird orthodoxy stuff.
But like, what?
This is heresy, bro.
I'm pretty sure nowhere in the I don't think in the Council of like Nicaea they were like debating if like you should change your heart physically, like, and switch your organs up, Blade Runner style. Like, I don't even know what the fuck this.
He's Catholic. Someone said in the chat.
Dude, this shit is. I feel like I'm going crazy listening.
Yeah, no, but this guy is a very powerful person, and his ideas are not very coherent or very logical. He's kind of all over the place. Like,
you know what? What I love also is that like people criticize us for being like utopian and like
Our
unreal.
utopian does not reach even a tenth of whatever.
No,
the fuck
not
this
even
is.
close, dude. Like, are you kidding me? Like, what the?
Duthot is Orthodox Christian after Francis came in.
Is that before or after he moved to Hungary?
Yeah, wow. Okay, let's watch a little bit more. And
Yeah,
then-
there's another segment after this one.
And so,
right, but
this
the
is
other
where,
wait. I generally agree with what I think is your belief that religion should be a friend to science and ideas of scientific progress. I think any idea of divine providence has to encompass the fact that we have progressed and achieved and done things that would have been unimaginable to our ancestors. But it still also seems like, yeah, the promise of Christianity in the end is you get the perfected body and the perfected soul through God's grace. And the person who tries to do it on their own with a bunch of machines is likely to end up as a dystopian character.
Well, it's
Bro,
let's
God.
articulate this.
And you can have a heretical form of Christianity,
I-
that says something else.
I don't know. I think the word nature does not occur once in the Old Testament, and so if you and there is a word in which a sense in which the way I understand the Judeo-Christian inspiration is it is about transcending nature. It is about overcoming things. And
Now, this is a very interesting reading of Christianity, I gotta say. Since I haven't heard of this reading of Christianity. Usually right-wing Christian type, they're like, oh, the problem with trans is that it goes against nature. But Teal is like, no, it doesn't go far enough.
That is kind of cool. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really disagree with the idea that we need to I don't think we need to be in fealty to nature or anything but at the same time I don't think we should be creating these false promises of immortality and stuff. And
yeah, I don't even know where to begin with transhumanism.
Yeah, because there is a logical kernel to transhumanism. I mean, in a way, we already are transhumanists in the sense that we
I don't know that much about it, honestly, as I guess a body of thought, but I would actually argue the same thing, that we're already transhuman. I mean, your smartphone could be considered an extension of your bodily organs at this point.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know what to think of transhumanism. I'd have to read more and an actual intelligent version of it.
Yeah, but it's just
as opposed to just some shit about biohacking and fucking like cyberpunk, like
Yeah, I can't. It's just such a melange of ideas. It's hard to know what we're talking about.
Yeah,
Right. Exactly.
like if someone was like, "Oh, I could like give you a mod that like lets you jump higher," I'd be like, "Okay,
Hell yeah, dude! I want to dunk,
bro. Yeah, I want to dunk." So, but like, what is the debate there? That like, let me imagine X and then say it's good. Do you want it? Sure. Okay. Like, there's nothing profound about debating that.
Yeah, it's like this whole kind of futurology stuff that kind of got big in like the 60s and 70s of like people just coming up with these like ideas about what the future is going to be like. And that's why we need to give technology funding. Like we need to give like these tech companies tons of money. I mean, that's the thing. That's what it sounds like. Is basically just coming up with these like fantastic like ideas about like, you know, utopian sounding technologies that are basically scams to get people to give like tons of money to tech VCs.
Had 50 years of stagnation. And one answer is we ran out of ideas. The other answer is that something happened culturally where it wasn't allowed. And then the cultural answer can be sort of a bottom-up answer, that it was just some transformation of humanity into this sort of more docile kind of a species, or it can be at least partially top down, that there is this, you know, this machinery of government that got changed into this stagnations thing. I think something like this, nuclear power was supposed to be the power of the 21st century, and you know, it somehow has gotten off-ramped all over the world on a worldwide basis. You know,
so in a sense, we're already living under a moderate rule of the Antichrist in that telling. Do you think God is in control of history?
Man, this is again like I think that there's always room for human freedom and human choice. These things are, you know, or at least where we are today, these things are, you know, they're not, you know, they're not absolutely predetermined one way or another.
Right.
But
you know, God wouldn't leave us forever under the rule of a mild, moderate, stagnationist antichrist, right? That can't be how the story ends, right?
It's attributing too much causation to God is always a problem. You know, if I don't know, there are different Bible verses I can give you, but I'll give you John 15:25, where Christ says, "They hated me without cause." And so it's all these people that are persecuting Christ have no reason, no cause for why they're persecuting Christ. And if we interpret this as a ultimate causation verse, they want to say, I'm persecuting you because God caused me to do this. God is causing everything. And the Christian view is anti-Calvinist. God is not behind history. God is not causing everything. If you say God's causing everything,
but God is. But wait,
you're scapegoating God.
But God is behind.
Okay,
God. But God is behind Jesus Christ entering history because God was not going to leave us in a stagnationist, decadent Roman Empire, right? So at some point. At some point, God is going to step in.
I'm not
right?
I am not that Calvinist, and
that's not Calvinism, though. That's just Christianity. God will not leave us eternally, staring into screens and being lectured by Greta Thunberg, right? He will not abandon us to that fate.
It is.
Bro, I love how he like the ultimate.
There is a great
is like this, like
I don't know, for better and for worse.
Unbelievable.
I think there's a great deal of scope for human action, for human freedom. If I thought these things were deterministic, you might as well, maybe just accept it. The lions are coming. You should just have some yoga and prayerful meditation and wait while the lions eat you up. And I don't think that's what you're supposed to do. It's
no, I agree with that. And I think on that note, I'm just trying to be hopeful and suggesting that, in trying to resist the Antichrist, using your human freedom, you should have hope that you'll succeed, right?
We can agree on that.
Good. Peter Teal, thank you for joining me.
Bro, this is like that was like a nightmare theologian
Yeah,
rotation. That's the shittiest theological discussion.
That was the shittiest theological discussion of all time.
Yeah, no, Hegel's Theodicy and Leibniz's Theodicy, and like you just compare that level to that trash, and it's unbelievable.
Like, he kept trying to say, like, I'm not that Calvinist. Like, my understanding of Calvinism is that God doesn't give a shit what we do.
Well, you know, Carlos, you're really pushing that that Salafi beard, so you must have been plus 100 in theology.
I mean, what I'll say is that we should try to get Peter Thiel excommunicated from the Catholic Church because he was espousing heresies related to transhumanism.
I agree, bro. Yeah. No, that was wow. That was
Yeah, no, it's an insane interview, and this is the exoteric Peter Thiel. This is his public facing, like, for human consumption Peter Thiel. The esoteric Peter Thiel is probably
a lot darker. What's it called? You know, compare this to, like, I mean, I'm not a huge, I actually more or less despise him, but you compare that to like Slavoj Žižek or whatever, and it's like, even like the most like lame left-wing theorist, it's just like infinitely more interesting than that trash.
At least Slavoj is entertaining.
Yeah. And like can be thought-provoking, honestly. So, you know, he's quoting Hegel and Lacan and Kant.
Yeah, it's like all these right wingers. There's like one theorist that they know. Like with Yarvin, it's like Carlyle and James Burnham. With Peter,
bro, Carlyle, what a boring ass influence.
Well, yeah, but for Yarvin, it's because Carlyle is an apologist of slavery. So
wow, okay, that's so interesting.
Yeah, and you know.
Fuck, dude.
And Peter Thiel, it's, you know, Gerard, I guess, is like this fascinating theorist. But in the end, like it's the idea of this stagnation. It's democracy that is causing the stagnation, and we have to destroy democracy.
Yeah,
that's really what it all comes down to.
The dynamic elite needs to take the reins of history again.
Yeah, the dynamic elite like Teal.
Oh, speaking of the dynamic elite taking the reins of history, Elon Musk has announced the formation of a new political party, the America Party.
Oh no! And this is how we get our fascist party, huh?
I don't know if it's really gonna go anywhere.
This shit is gonna crash and burn. This guy's on too much ketamine.
Yeah, you know, it seems like Elon Musk doesn't really have much political clout without the MAGA stuff connected to him, right?
Don't they all hate him now? I mean, isn't that?
I think I think the administration hates him, but I'm sure he could still, you know, the right towards I'm sure like him. I'm sure he can convince him.
I'm very curious about what, you know, if this goes anywhere at all, but hold on. I'm trying to find like some kind of manifesto or website for this party, but it seems like it's just been talked about on Twitter /X.
Elon Musk's party of the American Volksgemeinschaft.
Yeah, I don't even what is the part? Do they have a platform, or is he just saying?
Hold on, I'm going to ask Grok. Let's ask Grok what the platform of the America Party is.
He's gonna be like, save the boar.
Yeah. What is the political platform of Elon?
Save the boar. The board must be saved.
America.
Jesus Christ.
Okay, let's see what Grok has to say.
What kind of name is that, man?
Okay, the political platform is not officially fully detailed in official statements, as the party was only recently announced and has not been formally registered. So yeah, as far as we know, this is not even going to go beyond.
Dude, even Grok is like, I have no idea.
Even Grok isn't really telling us that this is going to go anywhere.
Even Grok can't. He's like, but here, let me speculate what's going to be there.
Okay. Based on Musk's post on X and related reports, the American Party appears to focus on a centrist approach targeting 80% in the middle of the political spectrum.
What a fucking wow.
So 80% in the middle. So
Why not everyone? Why would
Yeah, why not even everyone? Like this,
why why wouldn't you just aim for it all?
yeah, you're not even aiming big for your failure. So
There's also literally no aesthetic quality to being like, yeah, middle 80, the middle the middle 73.8% of people. What are you what class is that? Okay.
They haven't
fiscal
focus tested it
discipline.
yet.
They
Yeah.
want to reduce the national debt because like this whole split was really about the big beautiful bill.
Yeah, I mean the major issue for him is just the deficit.
The deficit, which is like the dumbest reason to be
Yeah.
against it. Like,
Why is he so concerned about the deficit? I mean, he'll get his EV subsidies and his
Well,
government.
they're cutting
handouts.
those, aren't
they're
they?
cutting those, yeah.
Yeah, they're cutting those now, but like before, what the fuck was the whole issue with the deficit with him?
I don't
It's not
get
like that deficit actually affects him.
I don't get that.
I just don't get it.
Yeah.
It was a
As
big
long
thing with
as-
Thomas Massey too. Like, why are you not concerned about Zog or whatever? Like, why are you concerned about the deficit? Like,
Yeah.
why is this the issue that animates you? And it's like,
he's like stuck in like early 90s like conservatism, like obsession with the deficit. Like Newt Gingrich style.
Well, they may be working themselves back into the mix though, as the deficit does become more of an issue for American capitalists.
Well, yeah, especially when you
Specifically.
yeah. Okay, technological advancement. Okay, great.
yeah. So basically, funding Elon Musk's companies and promoting
Yeah.
Elon Musk's projects,
Deregulation.
deregulating Elon Musk's companies, deregulating
Yeah.
Elon Musk's projects.
Breaking the two-party system. Oh my god.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I'm fine with that. I mean, but I don't think you're actually going to do it. So.
Yeah, but there's no distinguishing feature to any of
Yeah,
these.
there's nothing in this that the Republicans aren't going to do.
Yeah, so it's kind of like there's no distinguishing. There's nothing that distinguishes you. Why would anyone vote for your party?
So the idea, I guess, they're aiming for 2 to 3 Senate seats and 8 to 10 House districts.
Okay, see that actually is not a stupid kind of like. That's not a stupid like goal.
Well, no, that's not completely idiotic.
Because you could like find like 2 or 3 seats where like the senator is like really in a weak position, and then just like blow up. I mean, and then
I'm sure they just created a whole bunch of them with this bill, right? There's been a whole bunch of seats that have now become precarious precisely because they passed the bill.
Yeah, I'm sure. God, this is just so big. What is
So, I mean, honestly, like, I think there was a really cringy post where you're like, let me see if I can find it. But where Elon, like, it lays out his strategy for destroying the two-party system. But
I think our big advantage here is that American politics is so fucking dumb that nothing like this can get off the ground, really.
Well, bro, okay. Imagine the worst case scenario where he does do what he says. Like, we've spent how many years have we spent trying to do anything like this? Like, Jesus Christ.
yeah. Well, the thing is maybe we want this to work. The more divided our enemies are, the better, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Like, we kind of want the ruling class to be as divided as possible.
And because
the more divided the right wing is, the less the spoiler effect is in play for the Democrats, and the easier it would be to build a left party.
Of course, unless he steals seats from Democrats.
Yeah.
And then people will just be like, look, you're contributing to the party.
Yeah. So, but the reality is this probably isn't going to go anywhere because, as you said, there's nothing here that the Republicans can't do.
Yeah. Also, I love the name America Party. Like, this is something I don't think people from the United States of America get, but America is more than just the United States of America. So it's like the American Party is actually like, bro, we're totally into South American
2 different continents.
Yeah, we're totally into South American sovereignty. Oh my God.
Here's some other posts or whatever. Free speech absolutism. I mean, whatever. I mean, I don't mind that per se.
I don't know. I'm starting to kind of like I've been thinking that I think about that quite a lot, and I don't know. I think that there's
it's just that Musk is not the guy.
It's just weird because no one claims to be against free speech. So
well,
it's one of those things where it's like
in an ideal world where everyone said things that weren't literally dangerous, I would be. I'm evidently it's an ideal of mine, but dude, like with the whole vaccine thing, I mean,
It does test the limits. It does test the
you know,
limits.
it really tests the limits.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Like, it's not like Musk is a.
But listen.
Right?
Did censoring people who were weary of the vaccine, did that actually help make people less weary of the vaccine?
No, I agree with you. I think that the strategy has to be education, more or less, and propagandizing effectively. But still, in the short term, it causes problems.
It does.
You know? Imagine also like they're like the anti-vax movement gains like a critical mass of people, and they like don't get their children vaccinated. Then you're gonna have like regressions in public health on like.
Well, we're already having that.
No, but like mass regression on public health on things like tuberculosis, and
yeah, give it 2 years, man. I think.
You know, and at that point is like, am I really going to trade in ethics of whether or not someone has the right to like talk or do X versus like preventing a literal like fucking epidemic of polio and tuberculosis? I'd much rather shut someone up or even throw them in jail than suffer the consequences of a mass like a polio epidemic or tuberculosis.
Well, there definitely has to be limits to speech. But I mean, you know, someone like Musk is not a consistent fucking free speech person anyway. Like,
I know. It's just like I do think that like this discussion in the abstract, like as I said, it's like are we gonna let polio? I don't know. It's difficult. It's a difficult issue. But like if I had the power to prevent people from not getting vaccinated, I might bite the bullet and force them.
That's a different question. Is like whether it should be mandated by the state.
It should be.
I mean, I think it should be mandated by the state, but the separate question is, should they be forced, like physically forced to be vaccinated?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a. How do you even do that,
dude? I'm sorry. Like, as someone who like has not too far an experience of like of their relatives living in a third world condition and being subject to, my grandfather barely survived the typhus. And
brother, this is not a question in the third world. In the third world, people would gladly get vaccinated.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what's so bizarre about a lot of the anti-vax stuff to me is just the. Do you not realize how lucky you are to have access to this?
I mean, like my grandfather, may God rest his soul. He, as I said, he survived the typhus, but many of his friends and relatives did not. They died, and like if they could have taken a shot when they were young,
absolutely preventable,
that prevented it, all of them would have done it. You know what I'm saying? So it's just kind of like, it's also like, it makes me very embittered towards these first world jackasses that they feel that they have the privilege to like regress their public health to third world levels. It's like just unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, with the COVID vaccine, like, I got it and I got the boosters and everything, but I can understand why some people were a little nervous about it because they like came out so fast. And
yeah, but it followed a lot of the same.
It did. Yeah, if you actually look deeper into it.
They just accelerated the process because there was so much money that was invested in it and so many resources.
I mean, it works. The thing works. I think we have ample data now to suggest that it works, and it doesn't do any of the things that the conspiracy people were saying that it does, like give you autism or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, some people suggest it did heart, like something to like middle-aged men's heart, or I don't fucking know.
I mean, any sort of drug or medication that's been, like accelerated development are gonna have some kind of. I imagine.
No. As I said, all of the regulations that all of the clinical trial regulations that.
Like, don't misunderstand what I'm trying to say.
No, I know, but like that Advil went through them too. It's just that it was accelerated because they invested so much money and resources. Look at this guy. Jesus.
I know. He has to make this is AI, right? It does have to be AI.
Oh, totally.
Oh, yeah.
He has to take AI images to make himself like look cool and professional. 80% of America is politically homeless. That doesn't mean that they want to be in your political home.
No one
not
likes
right,
you.
Not left, just America.
Just
You're not even American, dude. Like, not strictly speaking.
Dude, I love it. He's fucking Canadian / South African.
This isn't even the official Twitter. No affiliation.
I'm gonna start a party, the Kill the Boar
Yeah, hell
party.
yeah. Kill
And let's
the
start with
boar.
Elon
Kill the
Musk.
boar. Yeah, dude.
I actually recently discovered he's not even Boer.
No, he's not. His family moved there because they liked apartheid. It's just weird. It's just so gross, dude.
He's so bad.
He's so annoying. He's so cringe.
Oh, at least we're not going to have the Elon dictatorship that seemed to be in the works. But I think everyone realized that Trump and Elon were going to clash at some point.
I mean, I think Trump used him because he's like, this guy could be my fall guy. Everyone fucking hates him now, and I'm fine.
I mean, he's such an unlikable, detestable dipshit. It's very hard to turn him out.
He really is.
But for some reason, he has his fans. There are he has his sicko fans. There are people who, for some reason, think
Yeah,
he's
I bet.
the coolest guy and hang on to his every word. And I don't get it. But
I meet a lot less people like that now, though. Like 10 plus years ago,
Yeah,
I used to meet a lot of Elon fans. Now, not so much.
Yeah, he's lost a lot of people don't like.
Well, now he's losing the MAGA fans. So
That's what that was his last, because they were like, he's so American. He's America. He's doing what's right for America, even though he's like a wannabe bore. But yeah, he sucks, dude. He
sucks so bad. And this is the end of Elon. I think at this point, I don't even know what he's gonna do with his companies. Like,
well, like the board of his companies keep being like, stop. Like,
I think they're like secretly looking for a new CEO. They say that they aren't, but I think they are.
He's just gonna go in a K-hole for the rest of his life while they find a new CEO.
Yeah, they're gonna just like get him the fatal dose of ketamine and get off it.
Yeah. See, like I feel like, and I think Peter Teal and Elon, they have a rivalry, I think, and I think that Elon was always like the disposable one within like the kind of PayPal mafia, or at least he's the one they decided that they could kind of like dispose of.
Oh yeah, they kicked him out.
I heard a story of how they kicked him out that I wouldn't doubt that it's true.
Like he wrote some software or helped write some software, and then like because it was like a potential competitor to PayPal, they bought him off, and then they like actually got access to the software, and they're like, this is shit, and they had to rewrite the software.
Right. I heard they gave him like dummy access to like the code base so that he can write whatever he wants, but they wouldn't use his code. And then the entire time they did like a boardroom coup to like buy him out of his
he's the
PayPal
seditious of the
position.
PayPal mafia. They were like, you're not a contributor. Just they gave him dummy access. That's so pathetic, dude. It's so pathetic. And then this is really an example of how like a tiny bit of ingenuity and a whole lot of luck can propel you to just towering heights of wealth. Incredible. Anyways, let's start wrapping up.
Yeah, I think that is everything we wanted to cover today. I did want to boost this fundraiser one last time before we
Yeah, please do. I'll take a look as well. I'll donate.
But yeah, this is a fundraiser that we are promoting for Gaza. As I said earlier, someone on their team got killed like a day ago. So it's, as you can see, the conditions are very horrible. Baby formula is running out in Gaza. Famine is intensifying. People's homes are being lost. People are living in tent cities that are getting bombed by Israel. They're shooting people
at the humanitarian
aid.
Yeah.
So, like I said earlier, just share this fundraiser. I'm gonna put it up in the chat for anyone to share, and it's up here.
Okay, wait. Put it in the chat for me. Oh, wait. Okay.
Yeah, but this is a solid fundraiser. It's being organized by solid people, and whatever we can donate, even if it's just like $5, just even if it's just moral support, it means a lot for these people, and they're doing a lot to help their community in Gaza. And you know, we're here in the West. The war seems very disconnected from us, but the truth is we're not far away from it because we
Well, we pay for it,
making it possible. Yeah,
we fucking pay for it with our taxes.
Yeah. We pay for it, and the material infrastructure that makes it possible is in our own backyards. So yeah, please donate if you can. Please share, especially if you have a big account. I know there's a lot of different fundraisers and whatnot going around for Gaza, but this is a legit one, so please share if you can. And next week we're going to be having C. Derek Varn on, and we're going to be discussing the James Burnham book, The Machiavellians, which we've talked a little bit about before. We've it's kind of come to where we've talked about Burnham before, but kind of wanted to do a deep dive into some of the Italian elite theory that influences a lot of the tech right people that we've been talking about, especially Curtis Yarvin.
And I think along with Nietzsche, the elite theorists are the most sophisticated critics of socialism. Right.
And I think through reading this book, we've actually been learning a lot ourselves and finding that a lot of these people have quite have insights of their own that we can learn from through political realism.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think it's going to be a very interesting discussion. It's going to be kind of a theory chat. Varn, he's read a lot of this stuff. He's kind of an expert on this stuff. He knows a lot about Burnham. He knows a lot about Sorel and Moscow and all this stuff. So it'll be a good discussion. I'm excited to get philosophical. And
thank you.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, everyone. And
check out Cosmonaut Magazine. We also have a Patreon. Donate if you can.
We got merch. We got merch being promoted, so check out our merch.
Get some merch and share with your friends, your colleagues. We're trying to grow this, especially on like Twitch and
definitely help us grow this on Twitch and YouTube and not rely so much on fucking Elon's X, because that's where we get most of our views.
It's not good.
But it is what it is.
Anyways,
all right, comrades, I'm gonna
take care.
How the fuck you expect me to act? So great, get some old Air Max. I told straps cause I'm always so